just I like to tap the gavel.
No, I know you've got a taste for it.
It's the power, I can feel it. I feel like Thor.
Yeah, we are.
We can start. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Welcome to the meeting. Please ensure your mobile phones are switched into silent to avoid any disruption to the meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, you will be directed where to go by officers. Please follow the instructions given. Please can I take the opportunity to remind members of the protocol to be followed at the meeting and the procedures in place in relation to speaking, which must be adhered to at all times. And we'll now move on to prayers. And I will read out the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. We now move on to apologies. Please, Caroline, can you confirm any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received on behalf of Councillors Linda Bayram, Boynton, Birch, Green, Holmes, Horton, Jefferson, McMaster, Nickerson, Rogers and Sargentson.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 1, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please?
Councillor Harold?
Sorry. Oh, it's trouble with looking at the back and not the front, yes.
Interest in agenda item 8, insofar as I'm a governor at East Riding College.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Rudd, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest on the exempted item, agenda item 6B. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item 8A, in so much as I'm a governor at East Riding College. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hammond, please, if you could wait for the mic, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 12, that I'm a member of 2 parish councils.
Yes. I will take that as read that everybody actually deals with parish councils on an ongoing basis. But I do appreciate, Councillor Hammond, you are a member of them. Councillor Coultish, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 6A, non-pecuniary interest, as I mentioned.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Are there any further declarations? No. Thank you very much indeed. We will now move on to item agenda number 2, the minutes. And that I would move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of October 2021 be approved and signed as a correct record.
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, please?
Okay.
Any against? Any abstentions, please? Thank you. That is carried. Item 3, petitions. There are no petitions. Questions by electors. There are no questions. Communications. There are no communications to read out. So we'll move on to item agenda number 6, minutes of the Cabinet and committees. I would move that the minutes of the meetings listed at item 6 on the council summons be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved and adopted with the exception of minute 1421 of Standards Committee and minute 221 of the Standards Committee hearing held on the 11th of October 2021.
Beg to second, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Okay.
Any against, please?
No.
Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Item number 6, accepted minute standards committee. Councillor Norman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move that the accepted minutes be received.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis? I think we heard you, Councillor Dennis. Thank you. Councillor Nolan to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Fellow councillors, the Standards Committee is a committee of this council, so I don't think there should be any apologies for opening this item. The reason I've opened this is because I think it'd be wrong for it simply to go through without any comment as part of the council papers. And especially as here, when there are allegations of harassment with some unpleasant racial overtones, it's even more important that we hold these to the light. Councillors do, I think, need to read the report to the Standards Committee of the 11th of October, because some of the issues that I'm raising are not covered adequately in the précis that appearing in the council papers before you today. What is relevant is the second paragraph of the report, which talks about the incidences between Councillor Coultish and Mr. Maddock, who's the complainant. Now, there was clearly something went on, because there was a complaint made by Mr. Maddock to the Deputy Returning Officer, who asked the police to be involved to speak to Councillor Coultish. Subsequent police investigation, as I understand it, has led to no further action. In effect, the complaint was dismissed. My concern is that there's a lot of talk in the report about politics and anti-Semitism, and to some extent, and I quote Councillor Coultish on this, when he says, in his opinion, the Labour candidates team had planned allegations like these in the days and weeks before the election account. Now, Councillor Coultish was known to have previous form in tweeting Islamophobic comments, and this was brought out in the report. Now, certainly, when we heard about that, we took the view that he was a young lad at the time, and he'd wholeheartedly apologised, and therefore no further action should be taken. However, it's clearly part of the context of what's gone on here. Now, I think the idea that Mr. Maddock has complained to the Deputy Returning Officer and the police were involved because the Labour Party had planned allegations just as incredible. I mean, the idea that somebody would bring the police into it because they were out to get Councillor Coultish just doesn't make sense. And in the report it says, section 7.10, Mr. Maddock has stated that he was extremely disappointed with the conclusions of the report and what he regarded as a lack of importance being placed on his allegations by East Riding of Yorkshire Council. Now, we all know in the news that recently there's been a lot of talk about Yorkshire Cricket Club and, sort of systematic racism that's gone on that's not been brought out. I'm not saying that's going on in the East Riding, but to me it's clear that where there are allegations with a racial overtone, it should be dealt with as a high priority, and I'm sure all councillors would agree with me. Mr. Maddock comments that the council refused to investigate until a third party became involved. He added that the council had been more worried about finding a loophole for Councillor Coultish to climb out of than actually investigating his complaints. Now, Mr Maddock's comments, whether you believe them or not, or whether you think they're right or wrong, really should be in the report's conclusions. And it also, I think, should be summarised here in the full council papers, because people just reading the council papers don't get a sense of Mr Maddock's main complaint, which was not necessarily about Councillor Coultish, although he did complain about him, but the way the council dragged its heels over investigating his complaints. Now, the report comes, I think, to two conclusions. One is that it's Councillor Coultish's word against Mr Maddock, and there's a lack of corroborating evidence. And the second one is that Councillor Coultish was not acting as a councillor at the time. Now, that point, I think, does raise an issue, because if there had been corroborating evidence against Councillor Coultish, what would we be doing? Would we be dealing with it, or would we have said, well, he wasn't acting as a councillor? So I think that raises an issue, which I'm going to bring in when we talk on the next item about Councillor Rudd. So, I mean, the minutes, and I'm winding up now, the minutes show that Councillor David Jeffries absented himself for this item because he said he was at the count. He also said he was a fellow Goole ward member. Well, unless there's been a boundary change, or the minutes are not accurate, Councillor Jeffries and Councillor Coultish represent two different wards. Furthermore, Councillor David Jeffries is not a member of the same political party as Councillor Coultish. Now, if Councillor Jeffries was present at the count, why did he not provide evidence? He has an opportunity today to speak. And I'd also call on Councillor Coultish, now that I've opened this item, to give a personal explanation as to what happened and why he hasn't apologised for what, on the face of it, looks like hijinks. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jeffries, please.
Thank you, Chair. The reason I made myself absent was because I took advice on this subject before the meeting took place. We were present at that count, and I spoke twice about the issues, and I was advised that it would be better if I abstained from being present when it was discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Owen, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All I wanted to say is we are here today to discuss the actual outcome of a Standards Committee meeting. Whatever else happened on that night is nothing to do with what we are looking at today or deciding upon today. I don't quite know why Councillor Nolan wants to raise issues that aren't pertinent to the actual report. The Standards Committee had the opportunity to discuss, debate, look at all the issues involved. And I'm very surprised that Councillor Nolan feels he has to revisit what was obviously discussed, I hope, at that Standards Committee meeting. And actually, the result was that there was no case to answer for, and that's how it stands, in my opinion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fox, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to speak on behalf of Councillor Coultish here, sorry, Nick. I do wonder sometimes, I was there that evening and I witnessed almost everything that happened in that room. And I do wonder sometimes, when a councillor's been there, why you're not called to these standards meetings so that you can put your case forward. And all I can say, I was there that evening, and I was close by all evening, and I never heard anything said which was out of place. And I must speak the truth of what I saw, and I do believe in what's right and what's wrong. And I can't understand why I was never called to speak. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Could I just remind members that we're not reopening the Standards Committee hearing. We are just here to discuss the minute. I believe, was that Councillor Winter that wanted to speak? Sorry, Councillor Bareham. I do apologise. I didn't remember which arm went up. Just wait for the mic, will you please, Councillor Bareham?
In 1760, the rules of natural justice came into being. It was mainly to do with enclosure acts and enclosure awards, because there have been a lot of problems before that. And I feel our standards procedure should incorporate the rules of natural justice. There is a lot of opportunity, a lot of times when someone's accused of something and the person who's accused doesn't have an opportunity to speak or say anything. They should have every opportunity. And I wondered if our officers would look into incorporating the rules of natural justice. I think Parliament's having a similar problem with their standards over the rules of natural justice. To incorporate that at the beginning, that gives an opportunity for someone who accuses someone to put that accusation in front of that person at the table, and usually the matter can be resolved then without making any reports. But I do feel that needs to be looked into.
Thank you, Councillor Bareham. Just to remind all members that the Standards Committee do look into their procedures on a regular basis, and will certainly be looking at that. Thank you. Councillor Tucker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm getting a little bit concerned here because the role of full council now isn't to do a post-mortem of what may or may not have happened previously. The role of this council is to receive that expected minute. And I think, Chairman, you've already stressed that, that isn't the role. I think we should really move on because very few of us, if any of us, were there when Councillor Coultish and Maddox was having that conversation. And I think, as Councillor Nolan said in his own words, clearly is a very subjective term because actually Councillor Nolan wasn't there, I wasn't there, so, I think we should move on, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. I do tend to agree with you on that point. I do see another hand. Councillor Fox, I think you've already spoken, so we will move on to the vote, if I may. So, all those in favour?
Okay.
Any against, please?
No.
Any abstentions?
No.
Thank you. That is carried. We'll now move on to accepted minute Standards Committee hearing, minute 221, the local investigation of a complaint. Councillor Norman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to move that the accepted minute be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved and adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries, please. I just about heard that, so that's fine. Thank you. And Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Having opened the previous item, I felt it right that I should open this one as well. And the reason I do it is because we're not just here to sign off the accuracy of the minutes. This is a committee of the council. And what we're looking for is accuracy in the minutes and also a degree of consistency. Now, Councillor Rudder's cut my mic. Hello?
It's working.
You were working then?
Hello?
Yes, you're working.
My issue here is that there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the conclusion on Councillor Coultish, which is that whether he did or whether he didn't do what he did, he was doing it not as a councillor. And yet I find that Councillor Rudd and let's be clear, I don't agree with anything that he did in this case. I abhor it. But it feels to me that he is being judged on something which, as I understand it, took place at home. He wasn't certainly wasn't acting as an East Riding councillor, and I don't know whether he's acting as a Market Wheaton councillor. But it feels a little bit like the evidence was there because we've seen the email that he sent, so he's being censured. Now I find that just a bit inconsistent, and I think maybe it's something for the Standards Committee to look at, that we have consistency, because this feels an inconsistency between the two. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rudd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I accept this minute with regret, because I must state in all honesty that I sent this from my private email address to the private email address of the complainant. And I expected the answer, if I got one, to be treated in a private manner. It's only because the complainant wanted to cause trouble for me that he went to the police, came to the East Riding, and made a big issue, which was basically next to nothing. Now, I accept this minute, however, with regret. I have accepted the Standards Committee's recommendations and apologise to the complainant and Town Council as advised. As far as I'm concerned, this matter is closed. And I just wonder, although I do take Councillor Nolan's words into consideration, why, in fact, this has been brought. This has been brought as an exempted item to be discussed. I can only suggest it's to do with political reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rudd. I can't see any other hands, unless you wave frantically in case I'm missing one. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I do wave frantically. We'll wait until we get the mic. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As chairman of both the committee and following on to the hearing, I do need to explain to Councillor Nolan that the members on the committees are independent politically, and they do read all of the papers which are placed before them, and they have the opportunity to question all of the investigating officers when those are there. So I think that what Councillor Nolan is saying is actually already in the positions, and it's already in the procedures. So we are an independent collection of councillors in that respect. The hearing is available on YouTube for anybody to see. The minutes are available on YouTube for on the website for anybody to read. And of course, you're available to be there, so you're available to ask any questions. And I think that what Councillor Nolan has done really has brought something up which is not really necessary in this instance. So I would again like to move that these minutes be received. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Yes, I can see no further hands, so we will move on to the vote. All those in favour, please. Any against, please? Any abstentions, please? Okay. And that is therefore carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item agenda number 7, Leaders Update. Councillor Owen, please.
Right, thank you, Chairman. And I would like to start by making reference to the Chancellor's autumn statement. and some issues that will affect us all as a local authority. There remains a lot of uncertainty whether some of the announcements represented new money or some related to things announced previously. £1.6 billion per year of new grant funding will be made available to local government over the spending review period to 2024-25. But it is understood that this is expected to cover all additional costs, including inflation, pay, and national insurance rises. As yet, there are no details of how this will be distributed or what conditions may be attached. The details of the local government settlement and its distribution to local authorities will not be known until late December, and until then, there will be a lot of uncertainty. The public sector pay freeze will end in 2022, but agreements will still have to be reached between local government and the unions, and these, as of now, have still to be reached. And as is mentioned, the costs are expected to be met from the government's increased funding. There were increases to the national living wage of 6.6% and the minimum wage, both of which will impact on local authorities' spending. We were informed that council tax would remain capped at 2% without need for a referendum. However, there will still be permitted an allowance of an additional 1% social care precept, which the Chancellor was making the assumption local authorities would use. This is less than the previous figures and previous year's social care precept and what we have budgeted for. Back in September, government announced an increase of 1.5% in national insurance contributions for a one-year period that would then be tapered back and replaced with a 1.5% health and social care charge. This was heralded as offsetting the pressures on the NHS and social care. However, it was stated that initially at least 80% would be directed at the NHS. It is accepted across local government that this would not be enough to cover the pressures in the social care market on an ongoing basis, and fears are that the public will think that the problem has been resolved. This leads me on to the topic we have covered before, the pressures on the social care workforce and funding. Huge pressures are still being faced locally, regionally and nationally regarding retention and pay for our social care workforce, for both adults and children, with staff leaving for much better pay elsewhere, retirement and burnout. There has been wide coverage in the media, and as a result of our motion to council, the issue was raised on the floor of the House and at the Treasury Select Committee. We have lobbied hard and joined by our MPs and others. I've written personally to Savi Javid and pleased to hear, probably not as a result of my letter, but he has announced a national recruitment and awareness campaign around social care. However, we need to take action now and not wait for longer-term interventions that may or may not work. Discussions are taking place now here and with our neighbours to inject some stimulus into the care market, looking at a range of options. In the small print of the Chancellor's statement was the great news that the Humber had been granted permission to proceed to presenting its full business case for gaining official Freeport status, with 2 of the tax sites being announced as successful. This is great news for the whole region and down to the strength of the partnership of our local authorities, private business, LEPs and universities working together. This will support the creation of around 7,000 new high-quality jobs on both banks of the Humber, driven by inward investment to the region. The bid is fantastic news for those wanting to see the economy being decarbonised, given that the Humber is the most carbon-polluting part of the UK. No route to decarbonisation can avoid the Humber, and the Freeport bid is hugely supportive of schemes to work towards that end, such as hydrogen projects and offshore wind. The Hull East site, which incorporates the Yorkshire Energy Park and ABP site, was agreed. And whilst the Gould site was not included in the announcement, it is anticipated it will be included in coming months as projects in this area are further developed. This now finally leads me on to some interesting projects. Firstly, the Siemens rail train manufacturing site at Goole, which is progressing well and hopefully will become a nationally recognised centre for work around the railway transport and infrastructure. Our new Raise Business Centre is nearing completion and will be a base for rail associated business ventures and close working moving forward with the University of Birmingham, who are the National Centre for Rail Development. Members may have heard that we have also been shortlisted in the last 5 potential sites for a fusion energy plant in Ermin, outside Goole. This is a process under development for over 60 years, and the universities of York and Sheffield nationally recognised for work in this arena. If it goes ahead, it will be a substantial project, although not a production site, will cover a large area, and with associated research facilities could make the site one which paves the way for carbon-free energy production, not only for the UK, but globally. Goole is ideally situated with motorway access, rail connectivity, and the ability to bring in large infrastructure via the docks. As the only site identified in the Yorkshire and Humber region, we will be actively looking for support from councils and politicians from across the region. Finally, to continue the thread of partnership working, particularly with the universities, I will refer to the award received at the LGC Awards a couple of weeks ago for digital impact. The Council has just won this award for digital impact following a close working partnership with the University of Hull and neighbouring authorities. In response to the pandemic, the partnership developed an online risk tool in the form of a questionnaire focused on the well-being of their employees working remotely, away from their normal place of work, who were using technology, such as Microsoft Teams, and want to undertake their job. The findings, which were analysed by the university's psychologists, particularly Professor Fiona Earle and Dr. Katie Cunnar, are helping inform future ways of working in organisations. This work has been recognised by the National Health and Safety Executive, who is working with the university to further develop the tool, with many other councils across the country already using it. There has also been interest as far afield as Italy, Sweden, and Romania. Local government is about much more than just dogfouling, bins, and potholes, although they are important to all of us, and particularly our residents. But the skills and resources available through our workforce are often used to work on innovative and groundbreaking projects that have the aim of providing services effectively for our residents in the future in our ever-changing world. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. We have Councillor Bayram, please.
I'm very pleased to hear the leader's report on the improvements and the extension of various facilities, places of employment and business opportunities taking place. And there will be, if this plant takes place, the diffusion plant near Goole, that will give an extra 1,000 jobs. But a lot of the industries so far will give a hell of a lot more jobs.
Councillor Bayram,
the question
are you
is,
going to ask a question?
The question is, where are these people going to live that gets these jobs? Because we are intend to reduce the amount in our local plan down from, I think, is it 1,450, down to 1,100 and something. I don't know whether that'll get through when it goes to the public inquiry, but the people who work at these places need somewhere to live. I don't feel that we should reduce the amount that we've already allocated so far, and I think that's an area that needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Not quite sure whether that's a question or a comment, but I mean, most of these projects are over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and hopefully the development of the local plan takes that into account. We're not trying to find homes for 1,000 new jobs tomorrow morning, but I'm sure the local plan will take all this into account, and it will be interesting to see. And Councillor Bayram was quite right, you know, it's really important. looking at the housing for the future, but I'm sure the timescales will allow that to be taken into account properly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you. My question to the Leader is regarding the cap of 2% on council tax, plus I think you said 1% precept on social care, which I have to say I'd missed, but I have been away on a holiday. That adds up to a 3% increase. Now, with inflation running at about 4%, plus the increase in minimum wage, which the government's taking credit for and yet is not funding, it all adds up to a net squeeze on this council. Does he agree with me that the government is only interested in chasing headlines and is being dishonest with the public, and it should allow local government to take back control?
I'm quite happy with local government having as much control as possible over its local finances. Also, you're absolutely right that the 1% social care precept is less than the ones we've had before. We do understand that we can carry forward an extra 1% from last year that we didn't use, so that would make it for 1 year only 4%. And I think the early indications are from our accounting team and finance people is that if we stood still today and applied all the measures that have been announced that we know of, we just about break even today without taking account of those future pressures coming on. So, yep, there are difficult times ahead. And I think as much, permission we can be given to spend our finance locally in the way we see fit has to be the right move. So I'm not going to blame the government for anything. They've got difficult times. They're trying to balance their books as well after coming through the worst period we've probably had in the last couple of years. So it's going to be difficult. We will have to tighten our belts. But anything we can do to make our own decisions locally has to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Despite the uplift to care workers' pay through the national living wage and minimum wage, salaries of carers are an issue. My mother's own carer at the moment ends up with around £4.80 an hour after tax. Will the recruitment campaign that you've just mentioned recognise the skills of care workers, acknowledging their role in enabling people who need them to live independently and offer improved pay accordingly?
Thank you. I think one of the main challenges for the country at the moment is having parity for social care workers with the NHS and NHS staff. And even if we sort of up to the wages today, there's no guarantee that will attract people back into the care sector, certainly in the short term. So I know the Chief Executive is working with neighbouring authorities to look at how we can help with the immediate crisis. And it may involve pay increases, but then you can't destabilise markets across neighbouring authorities. So it has to be done in conjunction with our neighbours. And at the same time, we have to, I'm afraid, look at the amount of care we are giving people, because there's a shortfall in the number of hours we can supply care for. So hard decisions are having to be taken. But all I can say is that first priority will be the most vulnerable. But of course, moving forward, it's a very uncertain time. Hence, we have to keep pressure on government to provide some short-term stimulus in terms of money to help us out with the care market straight away. Longer term, of course, it's a real worry. I spoke earlier that 80% of the increased funding will probably go to the NHS. So in 2 or 3 years' time, do you really believe that money will be going to social care, or will it still go into the NHS? The answer is, I don't know. But it's a debate that will be ongoing, and I'm afraid we have to keep pressure on through our MPs of all political parties to just keep highlighting the crisis that we are actually in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Leader, for the update as regarding the business opportunities, the skills and the resources, and the autumn statement regarding the Freeport status and all the other things. What I want to ask the question, really, this is about employment opportunities coming to the area. My question is about the infrastructure that's going to be needed on the back of those. Does the Leader agree with me that we really need to redouble our efforts to achieve the necessary devolution deal for the North Bank of the Humber so that we can ensure that we get the transport links, we get the infrastructure that we need to deliver better working times, better transport times, so we can deliver the true prosperity that's going to hopefully come in the near future.
I couldn't agree more, actually, that the sooner we can find out what is going to be on the table from Michael Gove and the new ministry in terms of levelling up, whatever you want to call it, combined authorities devolution, we need to know what we can do to get the best returns coming into this area in terms of finance. I mean, the projects are there, we know what the infrastructure needs to be like. It's just getting some clear guidance now as to how we move forward with whatever you want to call it, devolution. At the moment, everything's on the table that has been before, but we do not know yet from central government, and particularly Michael Gove, how he wants to move forward. But as soon as we know that, then of course we will do all we can working with our neighbours to get the right deal for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see no further hands, so we will move on to item agenda number 8, questions under Procedure Rule 7.8. Councillor Harold, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Would the leader agree with me that the Institute of Technology built on the site of the East Riding College campus in Beverley, which is a much-needed educational facility that will assist the council in delivering further education provision for our young people's future and provides the technology needed to keep the East Riding at the forefront of vocational educational delivery, is to be congratulated for bringing this provision to Beverley?
Councillor Owen, please.
Thank you, Councillor Harold. Yes. The Yorkshire and Humber Institute of Technology project, which actually includes a number of partner colleges, universities and employers within our Travel to Learn area, will provide our residents with higher level technical skills required by employers. The high quality, higher level technical qualifications with a focus on STEM subjects, that's science, technology, engineering and mathematics, will add value to the vocational education pathways available, meeting residents and employers' current and future needs. This collaborative partnership of 12 institutions is indeed to be congratulated, both within the East Riding, at East Riding College and Bishop Burton College, and those providers and employers just outside our boundary that our residents access. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Abraham, please.
Chairman, does the leader agree that the proposed closure of the Barclays Bank in Hazel in January next year is a further erosion of the town as a district centre on which residents in outlying communities such as North Ferriby, Swanland, Welton and Melton rely?
Councillor Everson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Abraham, for the question. I can confirm that on October the 22nd, 2021, Barclays PLC announced a further round of branch closures as part of its transformation programme that will see branches in Driffield, Hazel and Pocklington close in January 2022. The presence of high street sites within the banking sector continue to shrink on an accelerating rate over the last decade, in favour of shifting customers towards online banking, a trend recently aided by the COVID-19 pandemic. The branch closures in Hazel have been confirmed as the 19th of January 2022. In the reasons given for closure of the Hazel branch by Barclays PLC, the following was cited. 92 regular customers use the Hazel branch exclusively for their banking. 85% of Hazel branch customers used other ways of banking in 2020. 38% of branch customers have used nearby branches in the last 12 months, and 11 ATM locations within a 2-kilometre radius of the branch. The East Riding local growth team have also made contact with Barclays to discuss potential future options and an offer to broker a suitable solution, such as introducing a weekly mobile banking van in the town centre or facilitating the identification of suitable premises to host banking services each week. Barclays have informed the team that these options are currently being considered. And yes, it is regrettable that this decision has been taken, which will result in further reduction in banking facilities in Hazel.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. Will the Leader join me in welcoming and celebrating the announcement from the Chancellor that the East Riding will receive £50,000 from government to help pay for the business case for the reopening of the Beverley to York railway line, and thank all those involved in achieving this for our area? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker to answer, please. Just be patient, Councillor Tucker. We will get there.
Thank you very much indeed for your question, Councillor Hammond. Yes, I was also delighted to hear that the Minster Rail campaign, with the support from this council, has been successful in securing £50,000 worth of government funding through the Restoring Your Railway Fund. This funding will ensure that will be used to develop a detailed feasibility study to assess the potential to reopen the former Beverley to York rail line. This is the first step in an ambitious scheme that could see the reopening of the 32-mile route for passenger rail services. The funding application was supported by council officers, and the council has also agreed to contribute up to £20,000 towards the cost of the feasibility work. I'd like to extend my thanks to all those involved in the funding submission and this council to continue the work with the partners to support this business case as it develops. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeks, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 4th of December is Small Business Saturday, which is a yearly event designed to celebrate our small businesses' success and encourage our local consumers to shop local and to support small businesses in their communities. Does the Leader agree with me that our small businesses play a vital role in our local economy? And can we have his assurance that East Riding Council will engage fully with Small Business Saturday and do all we can to promote it county-wide?
Thank you. Councillor Everson to reply, please.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you, Councillor Weeks, for the question. I'm very happy to say that, as in previous years, the Council is pleased to demonstrate its support of small businesses by celebrating the Small Business Saturday annual event. The success of our East Riding small businesses is critical to the local economy, and to demonstrate our support through economic development, the Council undertakes a number of activities to support small to medium-sized businesses. This includes a key account management service, by which we work with a number of businesses on an ongoing basis, providing one-to-one business advice and guidance, from start-up position to one of continuous business growth. The Council facilitates networking events, which have started up on a face-to-face basis once more, business-critical information sessions, meet the buyer supply chain events, and through the database, a weekly business news roundup is circulated to around 2,000 companies. Small Business Saturday is a national initiative that we've been pleased to engage with over the years. It's something we promote through our social media channels. And in addition, the Council ties it in with the offer of free parking in all of our town's centre car parks throughout December, with the intention to draw people into the local centres with a view to increasing spend within the local economy. More specifically, this year, with small businesses in mind, the Council's East Yorkshire events team are organising a Christmas local crafts and produce market, which will extend the ever-popular Beverley Festival of Christmas event and the Beverley Saturday Market into a week-long programme of activity, aimed very much at supporting the small business community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Healy, please.
Thank you. Is the leader aware of a large sign that has recently appeared on a major East Riding traffic roundabout? Photos available on request, stating that the East Riding of Yorkshire Council is sponsored by Wykeland. And can he explain the background to this sponsorship deal, if it exists, and the nature of the council's relationship with this developer?
Thank you. Councillor Owen, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hean, for your rather surprising interest in Melton roundabouts at the moment. But yes, I can confirm that a contract was signed with the Wykeland Group Limited on the 8th of September 2021 for 3 years. Not to sponsor the council, but the purpose of the sponsorship is relating to the individual roundabouts only, and agreed with our in-house advertising agency. The cost of sponsorship is specific to the individual roundabout. The charges cover the costs of sponsorship, including business rates, and any profits generated support the council's street scene services with highways maintenance. East Riding of Yorkshire Council's roundabout sponsorship scheme started 10 years ago in 2011 and is managed by the council's in-house advertising agency. There are currently 27 sponsored roundabouts in the East Riding, and before any sponsorship can go ahead, colleagues in the advertising agency have to obtain planning permission. A risk assessment is also undertaken to ensure any signage will not pose a danger to anyone using the public highway. The size of the signage and wording East Riding of Yorkshire Council sponsored by on the signs is standard for all roundabout signage. There is a set space in addition to this for the sponsor's message. Details of the council's roundabout sponsorship scheme, including the standard terms and conditions and other advertising opportunities, can be found on the council's website. However, I can say how it read rather misleadingly in the example that was shown to me, which you forwarded. Council officers are currently reviewing the scheme and the wording of signage going forward. Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Thank you. Councillor Healy, you have a supplementary question.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Is the leader aware, therefore, that that sign was subsequently removed due to its misleading nature, and that these matters were actually raised by residents because there was a clear implication that this developer was sponsoring the East Riding of Yorkshire Council and not the roundabout? Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Yes, I can understand where the confusion occurred, and yes, I was aware that they were taken down, which was the right decision at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to item agenda number 9, outside body questions, and no questions have been received. So, portfolio holders' reports. Councillor Matthews, the portfolio holder for environment and climate change, will make an oral report. Councillor Matthews, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to cover climate change because we have an all-members briefing next month. So members will be given the opportunity to raise questions with officers on the latest situation. At the last council meeting, we actually debated violence and harassment on our streets. So I thought I would cover the operation of our CCTV cameras, which is managed by Street Scene Services. Now, I'm not suggesting that cameras are the answer, but they are one of the many tools in helping us to keep our streets safe. The council's CCTV team is based in Bridlington and monitors 80 cameras, 54 located in Bridlington and 26 cameras in Beverley, with a further 4 to come online shortly. There are other systems in the East Riding. For example, in Hazel, new cameras have been recently installed along the foreshore. These are being monitored by the Humber Bridge Board. The CCTV in Bridlington was set up here at the Spa in 1995 with 8 cameras and 4 staff working shifts. It was originally installed to monitor the foreshores, which had suffered from vandalism. In 2018, it was relocated to its current location when it was fully modernised to meet current legislation and upgraded to digital with the latest technology. Since 2019, with the addition of Beverley cameras, the monitoring is undertaken with 2 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff. All the operators are industry licensed and comply with data protection requirements and current legislation. The cameras record 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In 1995, VHS tapes were used to record images. Tapes, unfortunately, could only record for 6 hours before having to be replaced. Tapes which were not required for evidence were cleaned and reused. Today, the images are stored on a server with an estimated 10-year storage capacity for all 80 cameras. The majority of the cameras are pan, tilt and zoom type. However, there are a number of 360-degree cameras constantly monitoring in all directions around. Also, we have a thermal camera has been added to North Beach. This enables the team to monitor persons on the beach or the cliff areas during the hours of darkness or where there's a sea threat. Using normal cameras would be very difficult. This has proved extremely useful as we have members of the public with mental health issues going into the sea during the hours of darkness. The cameras have a great deal of useful features, such as privacy zones to blank out windows to ensure public privacy, but they also have a very good zoom facility with the ability to read a vehicle number plate at over half a kilometre, 500 metres. Of course, the CCTV team work closely with the police to reduce crime, make safer communities and support the police by producing evidential footage covering all aspects of crime. The team uses 3 radio systems. The first one is the police desktop radio. With this, the CCTV team are able to transmit to the police controller at the police headquarters. Then there's the shop watch radio. The team can communicate with shops in Bridlington, and in the evening this becomes pub watch, where licensed premises and door staff are able to contact and hear from the CCTV control room. There's also a coastal radio. This enables the team to work closely with foreshores to protect their staff and assist with concerns. The team have links with other council departments and are often in contact with licensing. For example, if door staff have been accused of being a little heavy-handed with their problem customers, or if someone falls in the streets. Statistics are produced every month, and they will show how many incidents, the type of incidents
30
the cameras
seconds,
have
Councillor.
recorded. This is the important bit, Chairman. An example of the monthly statistics. Observations, sightings should I say, 120, observations 40, missing persons, this is on a month 29, drinking in a no drinking zone 26, suspicious activity 25, concern for welfare 20, rough sleepers 17, begging 16, attempted theft 16, drugs 15, assault 13, driving offences 13, fights 13, antisocial behaviour 11, domestic 10. In September, Bridlington had 487 reported incidents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for speeding up, Councillor Matthews.
There was more as well.
I'm sure there was. We are limited now to 5 minutes. I can see no questions. I beg your pardon, Councillor Nolan. I was looking beyond you. Councillor Nolan, please.
Yeah, it's just a question regarding the CCTV unit at Bridlington. I mean, maybe it's something that Councillor Matthews can look into, but Hazel Town Council were looking to share or use the facilities at Bridlington, which he referred to, but were put off by the high cost. And I understand also that I think it's Cottingham has similar issues. So it seems to me that having 24/7 monitoring makes a lot of sense, but we need to make sure that the cost works for the town and parish councils to be part of it. So perhaps it's something he could look into. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Matthews, you get a second go.
Yeah, it's something I am aware of. I am aware of the cameras in Cottingham and, as you say, at Hazel. And perhaps this is something that the scrutiny committee can look at a future day. I don't think it's something for the review panel, but it's certainly something to look into. Monitoring 80 cameras at the moment takes some doing, as you can imagine. There's 80 screens in front of the controller. So it would mean additional staffing, but there's probably communication issues to address. But I think it's something that could be considered at the relevant scrutiny committee, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Healy, please.
Thanks, Councillor Matthews. Just to clarify, just my own information really. CCTV cameras are funded in many cases, certainly in Beverley, by Beverley Town Council. Are you saying that the East Riding of Yorkshire Council is funding CCTV cameras, or is it your expectation that this cost is being picked up by parish and town councils? I'm talking now about the installation of, as well as the cost of the monitoring.
Yeah, with regard to Hazel, it's the installation costs are being borne by Hazel Town Council, and I believe the additional 4 cameras in Beverley are being borne by Beverley Town Council, but the monitoring team comes out of the Street Scene Services revenue budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. No, thank you very much indeed for that. We will now move on. Councillor Harold, the portfolio holder for Public Health and Tackling the Inequalities, will make an oral statement. Councillor Harold, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Since taking the portfolio for Public Health and Tackling Inequalities, I have had the pleasure of meeting some very dedicated, professional, passionate, amazing staff, both virtually and in person. And I wanted to concentrate today on our domestic abuse team. This topic is at the forefront of our minds following October's International Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. And as you'll all be aware, our domestic abuse strategy is being updated following the Domestic Abuse Bill becoming the Domestic Abuse Act, and all its recommendations in there. This is currently placed in all group offices during the consultation period, and that goes on until the 6th of December. So please, please, take this opportunity to familiarise yourself with the strategy and feed in any comments that you may have. I wanted to try and put some context to this for you. So our domestic abuse team consists of 20 members of staff, and a new element to that team is the perpetrator service, which uses the support to change ethos to work with perpetrators in an attempt to break that cycle of abuse. Across the East Riding, we have 11 furnished properties that make up the dispersed housing system, and they're right across the authority. So this allows us to have the safe houses ready when needed. During the past 2 years, 3 domestic homicide reviews have sadly taken place. So we have approximately 40 victims per month. So 10 of those are repeat referrals. So for instance, 1 month's figures are 179 adult referrals, that affected 220 children. 71 of those were repeat referrals, so that equates to 40%. Out of those, 131 were referred on to the police, and 22 of those were self-referrals. So these are the brave victims who have reached out for help in some way, whether that be by telephone, email, or speaking to a professional and just asking for that help. So the process, once that initial contact is made, is that the victims are assessed. And that risk assessment is then put as standard, medium, or high risk. A key worker is then assigned, and then advice is given, and that relationship between the victim and the key worker is formed. As a council, we have a duty to provide safe accommodation. This can be new accommodation or on removal of the perpetrator. It can be enhancing existing accommodation. So this can include door chains, door alarms, window alarms, ring doorbells, CCTV, and any other security measures that are needed. We also offer ongoing support for those victims and their families. One tool in our box is the Freedom Programme, and this is a course where the victims meet weekly with other victims and they explore, share and understand. These meetings can often be harrowing because it often makes the victim relive the experiences while sharing. So appropriate support is given at all times by their key worker. Then following that, if appropriate, there's something called the Rockpool Recovery Programme, which again is one of our key tools. What I wanted to do to try and bring this to life to you, just to help you understand, is I had sight of a case study. So I'm going to give you the case study of Ms. A and Baby B. And these are in her words. I left my boyfriend after our baby was born. I didn't understand just how abusive he was. He didn't let me see my family, and eventually that was my friends too. He drank heavily. He had cheated on me numerous times, and even whilst I was pregnant. And he more or less blamed me, saying he had his needs and that I hadn't paid him enough attention.
30 seconds.
I felt really down, and I left after I was physically abused, after he came home drunk again. I wasn't going to let my baby be a part of this lifestyle. I was lucky I was able to go home to my parents. I took the step to contact the DVAP team and was deemed high risk. Chair, I may need an extension if possible because there's a little bit more to do. So if that's appropriate for me to ask for it now.
I'll need a show of hands, please. Okay.
Thank you. So I took the step to contact the DVAP team and they deemed me high risk and they helped me so much. They helped me find suitable accommodation for me and my baby. Our very first home, just the two of us. It's our safe place. Tracy, my worker, helped me get safety measures like a door chain, and I even got a ring doorbell, window alarms and security lighting. I'm able to go to her with any comments or concerns. I'm currently attending the Freedom Programme, which has helped me understand what I've been through. It's allowed me to meet others that have been through similar experiences and for me to share mine. I don't feel so alone now or silly. I can't actually believe I allowed myself to be treated like this, but one thing I was sure on, that my baby would not be brought up in this environment. So my thanks go to Tracy for all the support we received. My baby and I are doing really well, and I look forward to our future together. So they're her words and not mine. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of this vital service that our council proudly provide to what can often be our most vulnerable at a time of great need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harold. Councillor Jump, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Councillor Harold, and my congratulations to the service. What I would like to know, two questions. What percentage of males suffer domestic abuse, and what is the service doing to encourage those male victims to stand up and come forward and be helped? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harold, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Jump. I haven't got those stats on me, but I will make sure they come to you. And again, just to reiterate, when we're doing our marketing, we're marketing to all victims. It's really important that we understand, and although it is a lower percentage, it's still nothing that is ignored at all. So it's really vital that we get the word out there that domestic abuse is domestic abuse, regardless of sex, or it doesn't always have to be a partner. It can be children that are the perpetrators of the abuse. So once again, I think it's a really worthwhile question. We'll make sure I get those stats out to everybody actually as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, did you wish to ask the question, or were you just waving at me? No. That's fine.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. Would portfolio holder join me in welcoming Humberside Police extraordinary efforts in the violence against women and girls in setting up their own post-event scrutiny issues, and their advisory panel, which takes some bravery to look at their own decisions? Are you comfortable that Humberside Police can feed into the council services as well as you would like? Is there anything else that we could do?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Yes is the overall answer to your question, and yes, I do think there are always things that we can do better. I know they work extremely well with the team and they have weekly meetings. So again, I'm of the opinion that I really feel this is something that we should look at as a council, and I have already asked that we have it as a members' seminar, and I think it's at that seminar that we can really get the word out, get all these questions answered, because as I'm delving into it, you know, we all have the questions, and I've been able to ask those, but I am conscious that everybody needs to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aitken, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Harold. I'd like to share your congratulations to the team for the amount of work that they're doing, and I think that it is really, really important. I would also like to say that I look forward to working with yourself and the team, because obviously this really impacts our children and young people and their well-being. But not dissimilar from Councillor Jump's question, but just from a slightly different angle, and that is that often our residents will perceive that this is an area of concern for our areas of deprivation. But are you aware, as I believe I am, that this can also happen in our much more affluent areas, of which we have many, and rural isolation, which again can be a challenge for this authority, is also an area that we need to be looking at. And can you confirm that that is being dealt with as well?
Thank you, Councillor Aitken, and absolutely, yes. I think it's clear that we all understand now that domestic abuse is not just a black eye. It's not just a fight, neither in a garden or in a home. It's about the emotional impact as well, and that happens all over. I asked the question, do we have hotspots, expecting the same old areas of deprivation hitting us on there? And you are absolutely right, that is not the case. So once again, domestic abuse knows no bounds, and it is not just about black eyes and bruises, it's about that emotional scarring that lasts much longer than a bruise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Everson, please.
Thank you, Councillor Harold. It's a really emotive topic and very interesting. Thank you very much. I was interested in the approach you describe of the domestic abuse team. And my question is just, do the current statistics suggest that the methods you're using now, working with, are actually providing improved outcomes?
Thank you for that, Councillor Everson. Absolutely. The marketing team have done an amazing job in supporting the International Domestic Abuse Awareness Month, and also by monitoring that and ensuring that they can see when referrals are increasing. And in fact, after recent radio interviews and promotion of the awareness of domestic abuse, that there were spikes in those referrals. So that means somebody has listened whilst that campaign has been ongoing and has taken that brave decision to reach out and to get that help. So yes, and it is monitored. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Councillor Howell, for that update on how the council is helping our most vulnerable of residents. Clearly, there's a great deal of work going on with the destitute abuse team. You probably actually covered some of this question, but I just want to really, I mean, this is a new portfolio from that perspective, and you've obviously been in the role for 6 months in the role. I was wondering, could you please share with me what your vision and measure of success would be over the next 6 months?
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Yeah, it is to work with, like I said, a new element is the perpetrator service. So what we understand and what the team understand, that often there's a cyclical behaviour to this abuse. So it's keen, and when I read out the stats around the repeat referrals, what that's showing us is that many of these are perpetrators that if we maybe take the time to do some work with them, we can maybe reduce that offending, but we can also help them overcome whatever abuse and trauma they've lived in their life that has resulted in them becoming the perpetrators of this abuse. So you're absolutely right, and for me, the more referrals the better, because that means people are being brave enough to come forward and to seek that help. And from meeting the team, it's an amazing team, and they will leave no stone unturned until they're able to help as many victims as they can. So it is increased engagement with our victims, Councillor Burton, and more support and help for them. But then again, let's start that work with the perpetrators to ensure that we were able to diminish those repeat referral numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further hands. So we'll move on to notices of motion. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the motion before you today in the aim of protecting public rights of way, which form a key part of our rural existence here in the East Riding. I was shocked and saddened to learn recently of the 2026 cut-off date for registering historic public rights of way implemented by the then Labour government as part of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000, which could see public rights of way across England lost forever. By historic public rights of way, the legislation refers to any public right of way established before 1949, which is not currently registered on the definitive maps of the local authority. So just to clarify and assure residents, any public right of way marked with the council's finger post sign currently is not what we are talking about here, and they will be protected post-2026, even if this legislation remains in force. What we are talking about here are long-standing public rights of way, which are often enjoyed and known about by their local communities, but are not formally registered on the council's definitive map. Under current legislation, these public rights of way, if not registered or at least identified to be registered before 2026, will be sadly lost forever. The Ramblers Association estimates that there is at least 49,000 miles worth of these historic public rights of way across England, with 634 miles estimated to be at risk here in the East Riding. I feel it would be terrible to lose that significant mileage of public right of way, not just for the people, like many of us here I'm sure, who enjoy public rights of way and the benefits they can bring us, such as improved mental and physical health, but also to nature and the countryside. Public rights of way are a brilliant tool, not just to benefit people, but also our environment, as they provide the opportunity to get people into the countryside, educate people on the countryside, and hopefully help them fall in love with our wonderful countryside and environment, and therefore make them want to care for and protect it, which is obviously incredibly important moving forward with climate change globally, and hopefully area of outstanding natural beauty status for us here locally. This motion is intended to try and protect the 634 miles of historic public right-of-way across the East Riding, which is threatened by the cut-off date in current legislation. It does this by firstly writing to the government to ask them to cancel the cut-off date and allow us to continue to register historic public rights of way as we have done for decades. Secondly, if they are not willing to do that, ask the government to provide local authorities like the East Riding the funding needed to conduct reviews of historic public rights of way in their areas so that we can identify and register as many as possible before 2026. And lastly, in the meantime, this council will use all media resources at its disposal to promote the need to register historic public rights of way before 2026 to the public, so that they can come forward with their local knowledge to help identify these historic public rights of way. I hope members will support the motion today and help protect our important public rights of way. And I'd just like to finish off by giving my personal thanks to our public rights of way team, who do a brilliant job and often go above and beyond to help us resolve issues of our public rights of way in our wards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stabbers, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Our ability to freely walk our countryside along ancient paths and rights of way has perhaps never been as valued by so many people as it has during the past 2 years. We've all heard how so many people have been badly affected by the pandemic, especially during lockdown, when for many the only escape was a walk away from their homes and from other people. But these rights of way, while used more today than perhaps for a long time, are part of our history, our heritage. And if we were to lose any of these routes now, then for certain we will never get them back. We must recognise and register these vitally important trails so that we protect them for now and for future generations, so that everyone can continue to benefit from the freedom and pleasure our countryside gives us. And for those reasons, Chairman, it gives me real pleasure to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. An amendment has been submitted by Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. I emailed our amendment to Councillor Hammond, I think last Friday, to say we fully support this move. It affects not just the rural areas of the Wolds or Wolds-Wheaton, but the edge of urban areas such as around Hazel. And you know, we have some concerns that some of the routes that residents use, they think they have a public right of way, and that's not clear in some cases. I did ask would he accept the amendment in the spirit intended, but I've not yet had a reply. However, as I said, we will be supporting the motion as printed. I'd just like to add a couple of comments. I passed this through to the Ramblers of East Yorkshire and Derwent to get their perspective on this. And they've come back saying, well, it may have been a Labour government, but there was an amendment introduced about the 2026 cut-off, and they're not clear whether it was the Labour or the Conservatives. But the point is also made that there has been a Conservative government in power for the last 11 years, and they could have done something about it. Having said that, they fully support the extending the 2026 cut-off date for investigating and registering claims concerning lost rights of way. They said the point 2, which is asking the government for money, they said it will help reduce pressure on local authority staff, what they call the East Riding Definitive Map Team. It's not a PROW team, it's a definitive map team. However, they're saying that they're the ones processing the applications. They are a bit concerned that Part C, the publicity and media, whilst is good, what they're saying is that actually it won't speed the process. The work would still have to be carried out by the East Riding Definitive Map Team, and they are short of funds. So additional resources critically needed. If the government is not likely to come up with the funds, and I suspect we all think that's going to be what will happen, that we won't get the funds, it may be that the council needs to look to its own budgets to support this. It is an expensive process, though. I think it's only fair to say. What they're saying is that when this was first started by the Countryside Agency in 2004, they were only able to process 4 claims in 3 to 4 years, and their attempt was abandoned. So a stakeholder working group of interested groups has made some progress in finding the best way forward, but the bulk of claims remain undetermined, what they're saying. And they also make the point that COVID-19 has further reduced the available time by at least 2 years. So I think we're all in favour of public rights of way being established. Possibly the issue about funding is going to be the real issue here. The media is not the solution. If we don't get the money from the government, we ought to at least be looking at what it would cost as part of our budgeting process. Whether we decide to take that as a growth item, of course, is down to the budget process. But given the deadline is fast approaching, given the lost time in COVID, and as they say, the bulk of claims still remain undetermined. So I would move the amendment as printed, and hope that all the council would agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davison to second, please.
Can you hear me? Are you?
I don't think you're on, Councillor Davison, or you're not holding it close enough.
Try again. No. Okay, we'll try again. That's better, isn't it?
That's
better.
fine.
Thank you. I fully support this amendment, the addition to the original motion, and fully support the original motion from Councillor Hammond. Yesterday, as I rambled through the grounds of Hotham Hall, that's walking and talking, rambling, it was permitted by the owners that I could walk through Hotham Hall grounds and onwards along public footpaths around North Cave by permission of Councillor Aitken. And I appreciated the work done at that time, the work done by the council's PROW team and the countryside access team across the county, maintaining the signage and maintaining the footpaths, and significantly for those who are not quite into agile walking, replacing stiles with gates. Everything's done to a very high standard, and I commend that team. I also recall the history and inheritance of our public footpaths. In particular, as I frequently walked through fields of crops diagonally from one village to another on long-used footpaths, even more personally by my great-great-great-grandfather, who would walk from Haysthorpe to Harpham to meet and woo his future wife, Alice, who he would marry in 1806. This is our heritage, and walking in East Riding is our tourism future, which we should secure and expand. So I second the amendment and the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bayram, please.
Public rights are the rights of the public, and the public's rights should be a function of the councillors, not a function of the officers. And it was part of the councillors' functions many, many years ago. These public rights of way started off, they didn't start off for people walking along them for pleasure. They started off as a need for different farms, and it was workers going to the farms children going to school, and various things like that. There was a lot of roads in them related to them. There was all set out in the definitive maps, which started, there was some ancient enclosures, but most of them came after 1760, when the rules of natural justice came in, and that seemed to trigger them, because there was a lot of objections at the time. The cut-off date needs more detailed information than in the Natural England Guide to Definitive Maps on page 3 and on page 6 defines the cut-off date. That is this booklet there, which is only a simple booklet, but I think it wouldn't be a bad thing for all members to have a copy of this booklet. Byways open to all traffic will go, although unrecorded vehicular rights will not be extinguished. We need to ask what the procedure is to add a carriageway to the council's records. The cut-off date only relates to footpaths and bridleways, which existed before 1949. The first definitive map law, and that was 1949, came into being. In 2008, Natural England decided not to undertake any further archive research. Instead, they are looking into the present legislation and procedures they will then decide whether to implement the cut-off date until the review is, they'll not implement the cut-off date until the review has been completed. The issues involve public rights of way, the public's rights, and some of you will remember the old Pets Committee, probably not many of you, but the Pets Committee was Planning, Environment and Technical Services. The Technical Services part was to do with public rights of way. Following the loss of that committee, there was an agreed procedure which could involve some members. Now even that has gone. So members have no input whatsoever with public rights, which, as I say, is a thing that members should be involved in. I wanted to put a motion to the council to create a committee on public rights. A lot of authorities in this type of an area have a committee on public rights. I am this council's representative on the Joint Local Access Committee, but aside from that, I'm involved in definitive map related issues, 5 or 6 of them. The only objector to an order which has stopped farmers, landowners accessing their property. The council erected a barrier without going through the gating order procedures. Now, since then, I believe some of the objectors have, because there's been additional objectors, have received a key. But it's only recently that that's happened, when the MP got involved. Another road was on the list of streets, which was an electronic list. The council then removed the road without using section 47 of the Act, which is the correct procedure. They then removed the whole list after that. I would like the matter to go to mediation rather than going through to the courts. I was saying, another road was thoroughly investigated.
Less than 30 seconds, Councillor Bailey.
Sorry? I've only a little bit left. I've only two more paragraphs. There isn't much more. By our senior engineer.
I think your time's almost up.
Sorry?
Time's up.
In fact, your time now is up. So thank you, Councillor Bayram. I'm sorry we don't get to hear the last 2 paragraphs.
Members would agree for me having another 3 or 4 minutes. Will any members agree to that? There's one member there, Will? I can't get 5 members.
Are you asking for an extension, Councillor Bayram?
I'm asking for an extension.
I'd need to see a show of hands, please.
One hand. Now sit down.
Thank you, Councillor Bayram. Councillor Aitken, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'd like to absolutely fully support Councillor Hammond's motion, and I'm more than happy to also go and support the addition to the motion. I think I would repeat and agree with Councillor Hammond about the amount of amazing work that our Public Rights of Way team actually do for our very rural community. But I would like to take this opportunity just to remind residents that a lot of our public rights of way are so beautiful because of the generosity and the understanding of a lot of our landowners. And as Councillor Davidson has already alluded to, the beautiful walk that we have through Hotham Park is at the consent of the landowner. That's not a natural public right of way. So really what I want to do is just remind all of you as members that when we have any opportunity whatsoever when we're speaking with our residents, to actually remind our residents that when they're going through farmland that they do keep their dogs on a lead, and also that they are remembering to take their litter home, pick up their dog poo, and to generally have the right courtesy to those other path users as well as the landowners. So, but you will be very much getting my support. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Eldridge, please.
Thank you. Far be it from me to prolong this debate, but I think it's important that this issue is supported. From my perspective on the mental health of our residents, the pandemic has shown just how helpful it can be to our residents to get out, get some fresh air, and be allowed to wander through the countryside. Yes, we need the public rights of way protected, and we do use our landowners' areas to do this. So, but I'll also give our thanks for Mr. Spock, who sits today, who loves to go for a walk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hammond, do you wish to close the debate? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Owen, I didn't see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just wondering from Councillor Hammond's perspective whether he was accepting the amendment as part of his motion moving forward. I wasn't clear. I sort of lost track during the course of the debate a little earlier. Thanks.
Councillor Hammond, yes.
To respond to Councillor Owen, I'm personally quite neutral on the amendment from the Liberal Democrats, and the reason for that, just to respond and clarify some of the things which Councillor Nolan said in his proposing for that amendment, is that the actual physical work to register the public rights of way is not the major issue here. The main issue is actually identifying the public rights of way before 2026. And if the Liberal Democrats had followed my advice at last full council and perhaps spoken to our officers before bringing something to full council like I did with this motion, they'd understand that. The main, once the historic public rights of way is listed on the council's list to be registered, so has been identified, it cannot be dissolved as part of the 2026 cut-off deadline, unless, of course, our public rights of way team deem it not to be registered, and therefore it would be dissolved. So just to clarify that there, I'm quite neutral on the motion because I am a bit concerned it may waste officers' time because it's not needed in relation to addressing this. Part B and C of my original motion is what is the most important here, the funding to actually identify the public rights of way rather than register them, and also the media campaign, which is really important because most of these historic public rights of way are only known by local residents and local communities, so your parish councils and the local people who use them, hence why they're not on East Riding's definitive maps. So personally, I'm happy to accept the amendment because I think it can't help to try and get more money for our public rights of way team, but in the actual context of this motion, it is quite neutral, just to clarify that. Thank you, Chair. I'm personally, like I said, I'm neutral. I think it can't hurt, but just to clarify from the point of view of our officers, the main issue here is not getting the funding to register them, it's getting the funding to identify them. That's the important thing. Thank you, Chair.
I think I understood that, Councillor Hammond, but I think what I'll do is move on and vote on the amendment first. That clarifies everything. So we are taking a vote on the amendment. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions, please? The amendment has therefore been carried and becomes the substantive motion. So all those in favour? Any against, please? Thank you. Any abstentions? That has been carried. Thank you very much indeed. We'll now move on to Councillor Everson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I hope fellow councillors will feel able to support my motion, which is asking that as much information about all financial support schemes for residents is made available as widely as possible. The rising cost of living is apparent to us all. Every time we put fuel in our cars, we pay our utility bills or go shopping. And today's news confirms that inflation is now running at 4.2%. A pressure on everybody's budget, but for some households where they are already struggling to make ends meet, these price increases may not just be a challenge, but they can prove to be insurmountable. We are heading for the most expensive time of year with winter and Christmas approaching. And instead of Christmas being a time where we look forward to seeing friends and family, It could be the opposite for some people, and a real challenge just to keep their houses warm as well. In communities, there will be people who fall into the category of just not being able to cope financially, and some who don't know where to go for help. I would like to see information on the Council's website on financial support for residents circulated to as many people as possible, using our own East Riding News publication, town and parish councils, who I know have been circulated, and it is appearing on some agendas, but not all. So let's contact them again in 3 or 4 weeks' time with a follow-up email. We can make use of the Village Hall network. So many groups and organisations use their village halls, and it's a very good way of actually getting information out. Or radio adverts. The little local radio stations are very popular. And then down to us as residents of the East Riding. So during those worst days of the pandemic, we all looked out for our friends and neighbours. So let's encourage people to keep doing that and make sure someone living near us isn't actually in need of help. East Riding of Yorkshire Council may be able to help or signpost those who need it. So therefore, in the first place, direct people to use the Council's website, but recognising that people may prefer to speak to somebody in person. I'd also like to ask that the information on the website and support available is circulated again to members. People shouldn't have to make a choice between keeping warm or eating. And I'm sure we all hope the Council may be able to help in some way some of these cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coultish, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Coultish. It looks as though you have your ability to speak now. There are no questions.
To talk about a little bit more context. Councillor Everson's already spoke about a little bit. I'll try not to go over that again, and then I'll go into some of the ideas as to why this is a helpful motion. So, for example, Andrew Bailey of the Bank of England has warned us and apologised recently for the impact on rising prices. Low interest rates of 0.1% have been maintained, but as we understand, these are likely to go up by the end of the year. And inflation, as Councillor Everson said, is at 4.2%, where for residents the target is 2%. Energy prices have gone up by an estimated £140, and they're expected to go up by a further £200 next April. The average cost of filling up a car has gone up by £12. As we know, in a rural authority, lots of our residents rely on using their car to get to work. Food prices have gone up 1.1% in August, and they're expected to go up to be around 2.3% higher by the end of the year. Only rising wages, job creation, and short-term grant reliefs or benefit boosts for the most vulnerable can help cushion the impact of these things. But as we know, this won't work for every resident. In my experience, those who need help the most are the least likely to go out of their way to seek it, especially among the working poor, which in lots of especially our principal towns in the East Riding, are perhaps the most vulnerable and the most in need of financial support. I'd like to ask everyone, therefore, to support this motion so that we can promote employment and training opportunities. We can promote access to grants and support financial systems. I think we should support taper rate adjustments for UC, and this council needs to use every tool in its toolbox, such as the press office, social media, the website, town and parish councils, who often play a vital part in protecting the most vulnerable and providing the council's support systems as information to residents, and of course using community organisations and charity organisations within the communities. If we empower them to have the information, then we can empower residents to access help where it's needed. In short, this motion is really about doing everything we can to make sure the information and support available is given to residents, particularly those who are most vulnerable and most in need. And just as an example and a plug, community pantries like the one that's recently been set up in Gull can be a great help for people who need help, but not particularly the hard help, as in money in the bank account. The community pantry, just for people who don't know, is an idea where it's a food bank, but it also operates as a community shop where anyone can shop there, but those who need help the most, i.e. are claiming benefits currently, can get a further discount on the shop, and those who don't claim benefits and use the shop support that shop and the profits to go towards the food bank and the most vulnerable. So I'd just like to ask everyone here to support this motion, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Coultish. You have obviously stimulated some debate. So, Councillor Burton, please.
And thank you, Councillors Everson and Councillors Coultish, for putting this motion forward. And I think Councillor Coultish has covered a lot of what I was going to say. So you highlighted both the pressures, the dramatic rise in living costs, which are clearly our black clouds on the horizon. We touched on inflation have been 4.2%, and the supposed transitionary period about the issues around inflation and these pressures. They're becoming more and more stuck as we go forward. It looks like they're here to stay for quite some time. So these pressures alongside heating costs, fuel, possibly interest rates. When you're talking about interest rates, you're talking about not most mortgages, but you're talking about car loans, personal loans. All those things can be compounded. So it creates a potential cost of living crisis. So we're absolutely right to highlight the challenges. Obviously, against that, in some quarters, there's never been a better opportunity for employment opportunities, because obviously that shows in the number of companies and businesses that are recruiting, wanting to recruit staff and employment. But it's absolutely right to highlight the pressures, because like the council, finances are crucial, but also in family budgets, finances are crucial on the kitchen table, and it's absolutely right that that we're mindful of that pressure. To communicate what support we can give is absolutely right thing to do, and there's a lot of hard support out there from the hardship fund. I will put a plug in there for last year's budget, when we did go over and above and provide council tax support for the hard-working families, which other councils weren't able to do, but we were able to do that, which really put real money in people's pockets at a time when they really needed it. And obviously, as we go into the next budget round, we need to be mindful of these unprecedented pressures when we go through our budgets and, as a council, and obviously we'll set. But that's for another day. But nonetheless, it's absolutely important that we communicate what support's on offer, and we get that message out there. And you can never get it out enough, because obviously, we are constantly doing that, both as an individual, through our wards, but also as a corporate body through the council. We need to get that message out and what support there is there. So yeah, I will be supporting it, and thank you for bringing that motion forward.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan, please.
We will be supporting the motion as printed, but I just want to make a comment in passing that it doesn't mention the elephant in the room, and that is Brexit. Supply chain disruption caused by the loss of 20,000 EU drivers is one of the reasons why the dramatic rise in cost of living is happening. The cuts in the universal credit uplift, which I think was referred to as a tapering, is hitting families by returning benefits back to 1990 levels. And Brexit itself is likely to cause an economic damage of 4% to this country. It is undoubtedly hitting exports. So whilst we as a council should do what we can, we have to recognise that much of this damage and hardship is being inflicted by this government. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further hands, so I'll go to the vote. You're voting on the motion. All those in favour? I do apologise, Councillor Everson, you're absolutely right. Sorry, you're not on.
Is that on? It's on now, yeah. just really want to say, I think we're all agreed, and everything I've heard say is everybody does agree that there is a huge challenge financially to some households. And what I'm asking in this, and I think I have support for, is that we're as innovative as we possibly can be about how we get that information out to as many people as we possibly can. And I know that the will is to actually direct them to the council's website first, but I do make the point that a lot of people just like to speak to somebody. They have a lot of problems, they don't know where to turn, they don't know what help they actually need. And very often, a council website and a drop-down box isn't actually what they're looking for. They need somebody to give them a bit of guidance and support. So I do want to make that point too, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Everson. We will now move to the debate, sorry, to the vote. All those in favour? Any against, please? Any abstentions? And that has been carried. Thank you. I'm now proposing that we adjourn for a 5-minute comfort break for members. Thank you.
performance is about to commence.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we now, to remind you, we're on item agenda number 11 on the notice of motion, and we're moving to Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you, Chair. During the coffee break, one of the councillors came over to me and said, please read out all that's printed on the order paper. And I said, you're probably joking. But no, I'm not going to. It's all there in black and white for people to read at their leisure. What I am going to do is just talk really more about the local situation. Locally in East Riding, well, we have a map from the Rivers Trust, which I don't know if councillors have seen, but if you log on a site called the Rivers Trust, you can actually look at your own area and look at the discharge levels for your village or your parish or your ward. I don't know if the camera can pick that up for anybody who's watching on YouTube. So the Rivers Trust, and I looked on the map and I counted 154 sites that are identified as discharging sewage. Now, the East Riding, as we all know, is an area that's reliant on tourism. But here we have a map showing 154 brown spots of sewage discharges spattered across the East Riding. Now, much of the discharges are into the Humber and along the east coast. The biggest concentration of sewage discharges are in southwest Holderness, running along the coast out to Spurn Point. And if you look at what I call the dirty table of discharges, Skeffling is sadly top of the dirty table. It had 153 discharges, that's one every other day, and a total of 3,885 hours in 2020. Now, 3,885 hours in a 365 days year says that on average, discharges are happening over 10 hours every day. Withensea had discharges for 375 hours and Holmpton for 314 hours. Melton, near North Ferriby, had 331 incidences for a total of 954 hours. That's an average of 3 per day, 3 hours a day. Skibby, I always like to mention Skibby, and Cottingham, Skibby on the outskirts of Cottingham, I've got your attention now, Ross, had 84 spillages for a total of 756 hours. Bridlington, a popular seaside destination, had 90 spillages for a total of 194 hours. In my own hometown of Hazel, we had spillages for a total of 382 hours. It is a disgrace that nothing's been done to stop this. Funding of the Environment Agency to monitor river quality and regulate discharges has been cut by 75% since 2010. In 2020, only 3.6% of the pollution complaints made to the Environment Agency resulted in penalties. That's 3.6% of the complaints resulting in penalties. Our rivers are being polluted and nothing is happening. The pollution of our rivers is bad for wildlife and the environment, but it's also bad for the local economy. We are trying to promote our coastal areas for tourism, but nobody wants to go out and paddle in sewage. Elsewhere on the Council's report, we see a reference to the Yorkshire Wolds is in the process of being designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty. And I support that and I welcome it. However, having raw sewage dumped into the Wolds rivers and the Humber is a terrible advert for our area. And just to finish off by saying, the government have ducked on this issue in terms of something happening. They're saying, well, it will cost a lot of money. But let's remember, these water authorities were privatised years ago because the argument was the private sector would provide the needed investment to bring these sewage facilities up to date. The bills have gone up, but instead of improvements in sewage works and drainage, Shareholders have been made profits, and the promised improvements have not happened. So here locally, we have a disgraceful situation of raw sewage continuing to be spilt, which is affecting our rivers, affecting our economy, and affecting our residents. And I hope, therefore, that councillors will support the, I'll say limited measures, because we don't have a lot of control, but the things we can complain about, I hope that councillors will support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to speak now. I wish to second this motion to speak up especially for our rivers, as the Rivers Trust and several national newspapers have recently identified that raw sewage is being discharged into our rivers and seas with impunity, and carcinogens, metals, rubber and other pollutants are washed into our rivers on a daily basis. This has resulted in every single river in England being polluted. Not a single river meets chemical standards, including the rivers which run through the East Riding. West Beck, which becomes the River Hull, the Ouse, the Derwent, the Foulness, Gypsy Race and Humber. Rivers are important to the ecology and diversity of a natural environment, and yes, they are reasonably resilient, but continued, numerous and prolonged dumping of sewage comprising of organic matter, solids, chemicals and hormones increases the amount of bacteria in the water, which decreases oxygen levels, reduces the clarity of the water too. This destroys the natural ecosystem. Fish can't breathe or see where they're going and die, as do insects and amphibians. As birds and mammals eat the affected wildlife, so the natural food chain is adversely affected. Blue-green and other algae which grow on contaminated, oxygen-depleted water produce toxins which are dangerous to animals and also dangerous to humans. It's not just water companies releasing raw sewage into rivers which is affecting their condition. Farmers are also guilty of allowing animal slurry to run off into rivers. Water companies could complain their infrastructure is old and needs investment, and we hope that the privatised water companies will look to replacing ageing sewers and storm drains faster than they are currently doing. But farmers have no excuses. Farmers who we consider custodians of the countryside are contaminating rivers without fear of reprisal. This has to be addressed, preferably by farmers themselves. Hence our call for engagement with the National Farmers Union. And councils and highways need allocated funding to help prevent runoff from roads. I was shocked to read the warning on the Top Hill Low Nature Reserve website. Top Hill Low is an active water treatment works operated by Yorkshire Water, situated 6 miles southwest of Driffield and a site of special scientific interest. Yet it warns people not to go anywhere near the water, as the algae in the water can cause skin rashes and stomach upsets, and not to let dogs swim in the water because the toxins the algae produce are potential killers. I found this absolutely shocking. This is an SSRI. At least this water will be treated before we drink it, cook with it and wash in it, if Yorkshire Water can get hold of the chemicals required. It seems as if water companies have not been able to get hold of the required treatments due to disruption in the supply chain caused by Brexit and COVID. But hopefully, as the world gets back to the new normal, these issues will subside. Our rivers are a reflection of our care for the earth. Man has managed to destroy too many species as he selfishly looks after only himself. But we aren't looking after ourselves by not caring for our rivers, chalk streams, becks and drains. When I was young, we would swim, paddle, catch fish, sail and play in our rivers and streams without worrying about pollution. Today, there's no way I would let my grandchildren experience the joy of catching fish in a net whilst paddling, but there's no way you could catch sticklebacks around here anymore, because the only place you are likely to find them now is in a canal in the Midlands. Polluting our rivers is inexcusable. We must ensure the government reinstates proper funding to the Environment Agency to monitor our rivers. We must educate people so they understand that polluting our fragile rivers is dangerous, and we must prosecute offenders. I hope you will support this motion. It would be sad to think we can do something to save our rivers, and yet we don't. If we don't act, we will be further impoverished, losing yet another aspect of our natural history and heritage, and the ability to enjoy our rivers for work, play, and the benefit of our mental and physical health, and that of our wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith, please.
Thank you.
There's only one button on. Is that working? I'm on, but the light's not. Read into that what you will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to speak in support of this motion today, but please do not confuse my support with endorsement. The points contained within the motion are well established, and the suggestions do seem sensible. And despite the preamble being locally focused, at least in part, it is the motion that we are to vote on. And within the motion, there is plenty of context provided, but in truth, there is very little content, which, quite frankly, is an impressive feat considering its length, and its length is such that you could be fooled maybe into even thinking that I wrote it. Letters to various bodies and organisations is an unobjectionable ambition, and so it is something I am happy to support. But what can only be described as a cynical bid to grab headlines amounts to little more than arm-waving and indignation, in my opinion. However, I am grateful for it, as it allows me to inform this chamber and all those watching of the good work that is already taking place. Page 2 of 3, Brian. And I will instead be putting my faith in the efforts that this council is already undertaking. At both the Overview Management and Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committees, I have raised drainage infrastructure, investment and maintenance as a topic. I have seen to it that the subject is deemed worthy as a review panel topic. I have spoken with officers, with councillors, with multiple portfolio holders, with Environment Agency staff, town and parish councils and a drainage board. And it is my hope that a review panel can cover this topic with the depth it deserves, that it can focus on our area and on the impact on our residents, as is our remit, rather than the national focus of the generic motion before us today. I hope that it will feed policy recommendations and enable this council to truly address the issues in our area. I hope it will critically examine the pollution in this county and that it can act as a vehicle to bring about clarity and consensus, both about the specifics and about the solutions. So please, I do urge you all, support this motion before us today, and I would like to ask you as well to rest a bit easier knowing that actual work is being done too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dewhurst, please.
Thank you very much. Firstly, an apology, Mr. Chair. I should have declared an interest at the start of the meeting, as I am an employee of the National Pig Association, which is affiliated to the National Farmers Union, a body mentioned in this motion. I agree with the sentiments of this motion, but I do take umbrage with some of the tone, and particularly that accusatory tone towards farmers. It makes no sense for our local farmers to pollute their own land and water courses. And I had a look at the data, the government data on pollution incidents in the East Riding. And whilst there have been a number of Category 1 significant pollution incidents in the last 20 years, there hasn't been a single Category 1 pollution incident caused by a farmer in the East Riding since 2013, which to me suggests progress, and that farmers are doing the right thing and doing their best to prevent the risk of pollution. The motion also notes that farmers are almost never inspected, which I think will be news to any farmer in our local area. Farms are subject to the Environment Agency's own farming rules for water, which sets out in great detail how they must act to prevent pollution, and Environment Agency officers are on the ground inspecting farms every day. Most of our farmers as well will be assured by Red Tractor, which means they're subject to Red Tractor inspections and must comply with Red Tractor's own manure management plans, which prevent pollution of manure and slurry into the watercourses. And nowadays, supermarkets themselves run farming inspections. They expect the very highest standard of behaviour from their suppliers, and many of our farmers do a fantastic job producing fantastic meat and cereals to keep our shelves stocked well through the very difficult times that we've had in the last 18 months as well. Now, I think farmers would say they've never been subject to more inspection, more regulation, and have never done more to prevent pollution, and I think we should note that. So whilst I am happy to support the motion, and if it passes, I would note that the Chief Executive will be writing to the bodies detailed in the motion, and perhaps she could make an explicit recognition of the positive contribution our local farmers are making to the local environment and the work they're doing to prevent pollution incidents.
Thank you. Councillor Bayram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it switched on? This can you even hear all right? Then thank you. I can understand why people are having bother across there. The previous speaker mentioned farmers and farmers polluting. 10, 15, 20, maybe 20 years ago, there was legislation that said that farmers should have their manure heaps should be covered so that the rainwater doesn't go on them and create wet sewage going onto the land. The same thing when it comes to these maturation heaps that people are composting. They should be covered up for the self and same reasons, but they aren't always covered up. They should be covered up. The first thing that Councillor Nolan or whoever made the proposal said about sewage going into the rivers. Until 1964, all properties had a combined system. So the roof water went in with the sewage water. If there was a reasonable amount of rain, or quite a lot of rain, it flushed the system out. But the houses soon after that had their drains just on the same level as the ground. So when the ground gets saturated, these are houses built after 64. When the ground got saturated, the water was on the paths at the side, and it found its way in as well. So there was additional water in, not just the water from the combined sewers, but the other water, and that was too much for the Environment Agency, for the Yorkshire Water to actually cope with. So there had to be outfalls for the additional water. I feel that the houses now should have their footpaths around the house a little bit higher than the surrounding ground to avoid that. The third thing that was mentioned was climate change. Now, for the past 4.5 billion years, there's been constant climate change. If there hadn't been any climate change, there wouldn't be any coal, there wouldn't be any oil, there wouldn't be any metals, there'd be no plastics. Life would be totally different without climate change. I think it is a thing that we should recognise, that climate change has been in the past a good thing. And climate change will not stop. There's nothing you can do to stop climate change. You maybe can reduce it a small amount, but you're never going to stop it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holtby, please.
Thank you very much. I thought that Richard Meredith was going to steal my thunder, but he didn't. But Councillor Dewhurst has done rather. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to counter this statement in this motion that farms are not inspected, as mentioned. The relevant regulation, and Charlie will like this one, is Regulation 4, brackets 1, brackets A, Reduction and Prevention of Agricultural Diffuse Pollution, brackets England, Regulations 2018, where it states applications must be planned and must not give rise to significant risk of agricultural diffuse pollution. Farms are monitored and visited on a regular basis, and the Environment Agency can inspect at any time. Farmers are encouraged to comply with the regulation both by their own desire to look after the environment as good custodians of the land, and by the threat of the withholding of subsidies if they do not comply with the regulations. Money often speaks. Obviously, any loss of nutrients from the farms is not something any farmer would want. Nutrients are used to increase the output and therefore profit. Why would they want those nutrients to be washed down the drain? Equally, obviously, nobody can want any pollution of our water, but it's too easy to blame farmers. So while I would support the motion, I want this council to agree that farmers generally do as good a job as they can, and we should value their contribution to the East Riding economy and environment. In my view, the problem lies more with the Environment Agency and Yorkshire Water. Thank you.
Can I suggest that we delete the reference to farms are now almost never inspected, water quality is rarely tested, because that seems to be getting in the way for some councillors about the issue, which is really about the water companies. So if I can suggest we delete, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Delete point 8 of council notes that farms are now almost never inspected, water quality is rarely tested, and water companies can pump raw sewage into rivers. I suggest we delete that in the interest of moving forward. And can we also add that we do write to farmers to thank them, I think as Councillor Dewhurst said, thank them for their efforts, because this is not about anti-farmers.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan.
Councillor Nolan, can you also clarify, please, if we're removing then bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4 in the terms of the council resolves and replacing that then? Because under that bullet point you're asking me to write to the National Farmers Union requesting clarification, so we're deleting that?
I'm happy to delete that.
Okay. Obviously that's an amendment, so we will need to get permission of the council to that.
Yes, so we need to just get permission to alter that. So could I have a show of hands in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? So that's been carried. Thank you very much for that. We will now continue with speakers. Councillor Norman, please.
Thank you, Chair. We saw the huge public outcry that appeared on social media and the broadcast media when this story really broke and the numbers and the amount of disgraceful pollution became clear. In fact, it was so influential that it actually changed the government's mind in Parliament. Councillor Meredith took the words from my mouth, not all of them, but some of them, when he highlighted the close examination that this council is giving to this issue at scrutiny. But it is really such a simple issue. It's disgraceful, the amount of pollution that's being allowed to go unchecked. And we can either acquiesce or we can object and register our dismay. So on that basis, I shall be very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weeks, please.
Yeah, thank you. Chairman, it's interesting that Councillor Nolan wants a section of the motion removed, and obviously that's been approved. I think the reason for that might become clear in the next few minutes. I didn't intend to speak on this motion because fundamentally I support what the motion calls for. And before I share what I want to share, I want to be clear that the condition of our rivers and pollution is a really vitally important issue. However, there is something that I want to raise because I believe that it would be of some interest to members and more importantly to any residents watching. I've always been impressed since I started in this posed by the ability of members of the East Riding Liberal Democrats to come forward time after time with topics for motions at full council. At each full council meeting, there's always at least one motion put forward, usually designed to give the impression that the ruling group or council officers are failing the residents of the East Riding and that the Liberal Democrats are the shining light of salvation. So imagine my surprise when one day I was surfing the web and I came across the Association of Lib Dem Councillors website. Now, for members who are not familiar, this is a veritable Aladdin's cave of potential motion ideas, a list of every possible topic you could think of. Some of them are just ideas, but there are some motions listed by helpful fellow Lib Dem members, I'm assuming, who have actually written the motion out for another councillor in another area to use. So I was shocked, Chairman, and shaken to my core. I thought, our Lib Dem councillors won't do that here. They wouldn't utilise the council motion equivalent of a microwave-ready meal. The motions put forward are all from the minds of local councillors. Alas, because on the 27th of October, a helpful Liberal Democrat called Frankie put forward a motion by the Green Liberal Democrats, which mirrors exactly word for word the motion in front of councillors today.
Councillor Weeks, I do apologise for interrupting, but this doesn't really go to speaking about the actual motion itself and the spirit of that motion.
I'd argue it does, Chair. I argue that the motion that has been put forward, I think members would benefit from hearing the context behind that.
I'm sure we would benefit, but that's not what we're here for. So, as I said, I do apologise for interrupting, but it should be.
I will do my best, Chair,
Thank you.
do that.
I am listening, though.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think that we would all be forgiven for thinking that it would be okay to put forward a motion that changes a few sentences, but to copy and paste the motion identically, I think is just lazy. And to do so, if I were to do so at university, would be completely unfair. So, Chairman, this motion is not, in my opinion, the Lib Dems knights in shining armour riding astride their noble steeds to save the residents of the East Riding from pollution, but a cut and paste motion written by an individual with no connection to the East Riding. Now, I'm pleased that our motions that have been put forward today come from the minds of our local councillors, and I've no doubt that they will continue to do so. As for the future, perhaps we can expect to be receiving motions on local tree coverage, fuel poverty, pensions, and even football in the next few months.
Thank you, Councillor Weeks. Councillor Temple, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I will be supporting the motion, especially now it's been tailored to the East Riding. And I'm delighted that the Liberal Democrats are actually interested in drainage and that they wish to engage with farmers, having just been given a drubbing by a couple of our members here. Because as a member of the Beverley and Holderness Drainage Board, Internal Drainage Board, even though I'm a Driffield member and it doesn't actually affect my area, I would like to urge them to perhaps take up their seat on that august body so that they can then put their good words into practice and meet some of the farming community that they have just unfortunately smeared. They really should have done a little bit more research on this. And on a final point, algae is actually good, apparently, I've been told. It helps with oxygen and clearing up nitrogen, so, not very well done.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, please. Just bear with us, we'll get there eventually. You're at the back.
I agree with Councillor Meredith's comments earlier and have much sympathy with and support the sentiments behind this motion. We have in South West Holderness the Salt End Water Treatment Works, one of Europe's largest such facilities located near Hedden. And the regular discharge of sewage into the River Humber is not new. The place has been built for about 25 years, and I went on a visit during construction with other members of the Headon Town Council. I add that I've been back about 15 times since. I recall being told back then, 25 years ago, that raw sewage would be diverted into the Humber on a regular basis when the plant was working at peak capacity. It's not an excuse for Yorkshire Water, but it just shows how these authorities work. They spent, or Yorkshire Water spent, £50 million on removing the famous Headon stench, but have shown no signs of increasing the capacity of the plant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walker, please. Oh, so we can. Have you spoken already, Councillor Walker?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, okay. I apologise. Councillor Tucker, then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Nolan, I can't let this pass really, because listening to your speech very closely, it became very apparent to me that myself and Councillor Healing sat at the back. We seem to live in Pooh Central in Holderness, because I live, 4 miles from Skefflin. I live 300 yards from the beach. Councillor Healing lives in Wibbernsea. Now, obviously, we live with this on a daily basis. One of the things I think you need to be aware of, if you're not already aware of, is that we've got a new £50 million water treatment works that's just been installed at Hompton and Holham. That will get rid of what's locally known as the poo pipe. And the poo pipe goes out from Holham out into sea about 6 miles, and that's long overdue, and we'll be pleased to see the back of that. Now, one of the things that Yorkshire Water are telling us with this new £50 million water treatment works is when that sewerage is being dealt with, the waste that will be got rid of is as pure as water. And apparently you can drink a glass of that when it's finished. And Councillor Nolan, I'll encourage you to come down and have a try, should you wish. Well, I'm sure Councillor Healing would like to invite you down anyway. So, it is a problem. We have a sewage treatment works in my village. I live in Easington, as a lot of people know. And what I understand is the water that goes out to sea, although I wouldn't drink it, the risk is quite low. One of the points I want to pick up on Councillor Johnson was, Councillor Johnson talked about Top Hill Low and the rivers. The algae you're talking about, Councillor Johnson, is blue algae. And blue algae is an irritant, and unfortunately that is a sign of climate change. 20 years ago, we never saw blue algae. Any rivers, we don't see. Am I still speaking to this? Sorry, Chairman, sorry, councillors. A lot of you don't know I wear Bluetooth hearing aids, and I was just getting a call and interfered with my hearing aids, so I couldn't hear myself speak. Sorry. My apologies, Chairman. Yeah, so the Brungian algae is a sign of climate change. It's a thing we've all lived with. 20 years ago, we never saw that. But one of the things that I would say is I support your spirit of your motion. Absolutely. We have to get on top of this. We have to get away from sensationalism that's been in the press and recently down south. One of the suggestions, or one of the things that went through my mind when you was talking, Councillor Nunn, was some of these things perhaps could go to the Environment and Regeneration Overview Committee, and that's maybe a good starting point. Thank you, Chairman, and I do apologise for that slight interruption.
Thank you very much indeed. I can't see any further hands. So, Councillor Nolan, would you like to close the debate? Thank you. That's very, very kind of you to offer, Councillor Nolan. In that case, we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour? Any against, please? Any abstentions? That has been carried. Thank you. Now move on. Councillor Matheson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We seem to be talking a lot about environmental things today. Climate change and the drive towards net zero carbon have generated a massive demand for tree planting right across the country. East Yorkshire currently has less than half of the national average tree cover, but with good reasons. Aside from our arable farmland that helps to feed the nation, we also have precious upland chalk grasslands, a biodiverse carbon store in its own right, and wide acres of open wetlands, internationally important habitat where trees are banned for fear of harming protected birds. And thanks to a naturally productive and relatively treeless landscape, our county was home to prehistoric settlers whose rich remains we are still discovering. The combination of environmentalism, flood mitigation, and corporate guilt now means that there is no shortage of cash with which to buy trees. But converting that purchasing power into woodland is not as simple as you might think. Site selection, landowner approval, supply of disease-free stock, and permission to plant all need to be in place before any contractors or volunteers with spades can set a date in their diary. Uncontrolled planting could interfere with our valuable habitats or allow roots to disrupt archaeological deposits. So any proposed woodland site needs approval, similar to planning permission, and it's that approval given by officers within our planning department that this motion seeks to address. As a council, we've declared a climate emergency and we've set policies to encourage more tree planting. But we also need to ensure that we have enough suitably qualified people to process all that paperwork. We now find that nurseries everywhere are under immense pressure to propagate enough saplings to meet this rising demand. But these need to be planted during the dormant winter season. If the paperwork for applications cannot be signed off in time by an ecologist or an archaeologist, or perhaps waiting for a legal agreement, the high demand for trees elsewhere might divert saplings to another project, and that winter planting season is then missed. Few people appreciate the amount of paperwork that goes on behind the scenes before anything goes into the ground. Like the roots of a tree, these are the unseen but essential foundations. And as we face an increasing need for woodland creation, I hope that you will all support this motion and make sure that we have sufficient resources in all the right places so we can put the trees in all the right places. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about my voice. I'm seconding this motion because I'm also the co-chair of the Hayward's Tree Committee. Until I sat on this committee, I had no idea how complicated the funding formula was for purchasing trees, let alone getting landowners to give permission for trees to be planted on their land. Recently, there have been staff changes behind the scenes and new officers have been engaged. They are highly specialised people with niche role in that particular job. The gap between officers leaving and the new ones starting in their roles was at a critical moment in the tree planting calendar timeline. This caused stress and concern with other stakeholders, worrying that they would miss the deadline for tree planting this year due to a very complex paper trail. We are seeking assurances from the Council today that everything that can be done will be done to get all the deadlines met to approve all the tree funding. National figures show that last year we cut down more trees than we planted. We not only need to plant trees for climate change, but also need to replace the trees lost through tree disease, such as ash dieback, remorum, which affects oak and larch, and Dutch elm disease. And of course, there's land that's cleared for housing and other development. Millions of trees are affected nationally and locally here, and since 1990, there have been 20 new pests and diseases introduced into the UK through imported trees, and they are causing serious problems. Here in East Riding, we want to do our bit to re-wood areas so we can see a massive contribution to carbon being locked away and also a massive return to biodiversity, which is going to be replaced. It does take a long time for the landscape to recover and many years for a tree to become established. So the reason why we're doing this is so that our children and our grandchildren can benefit, and the environment and nature itself. So trees need all the help we can get, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson, sorry.
Yes, I'd just like to recognise the work of our East Riding advisors. There has been a hiatus which has been stressful, as Councillor Sutton comments, but one of the important things is not only the number of trees that we need to plant, but to make sure that we plant the right trees in the right place. And that advice is really valuable. There is a plan to plant 1,300 trees in Beverley to recognise the fact that it's 1,300 years old, and that is now gathering pace, which is really exciting since the engagement of new officers at East Riding. So I'd like to recognise their involvement and their expertise in helping to achieve a more wooded East Riding. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else. So, Councillor Masterson, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you. I think we've spoken probably for quite long enough for most of the people sitting at home and for others here. So, yes, I won't add anything more, but thank you for your support. We need trees. They're lovely things. And we need the resources to make sure that they go in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll therefore go to the vote. We're voting on the motion. All those in favour, please. Any against, please? Any abstentions? That has been carried. We now move on to the next motion. Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will read this one out because it's quite brief for the benefit of anybody on YouTube. That this council notes the bids being put in to improve Hull Royal Infirmary and other Humber Trust hospitals, and calls for the Trust managing Bridlington Hospital to bid to improve and upgrade its services to our residents. And I think members will be aware that there's been a recent press announcement about the neighbouring, about the Humber Trust hospitals have put in a huge £720 million bid to upgrade their services. Their bid would significantly improve acute services across 4 hospitals. Scunthorpe would have a £350 million rebuild on a brownfield site. Hull Royal Infirmary and Castle Hill Hospital in Cottingham, I mentioned Cottingham again, Ross, would get £250 million of redevelopment. Now, obviously, we welcome these bids, although the question mark is, will the money follow? Because this government has a record of announcing 40 hospitals, I think it was, and in some cases it wasn't happening. Now, on the back of that, though, it does raise the question about Bridlington Hospital, and indeed I could probably add Driffield. Whilst we're pleased that there's this improvement going on, Bridlington Hospital is being left on the shelf. Why isn't there an equivalent bid from York and Scarborough Trust to put acute services back into Bridlington? Are they asleep? I mean, it is a disgrace that our residents have been left with no accident emergency service within 20 miles. We have an elderly population and health issues in Bridlington, and are faced with residents travelling 20 miles over poor roads and inadequate public transport. Far too often in the past, we've had local Conservative MPs, and yes, I'm making a political point here, but politics is part of this. We've had the local Conservative MP and councillors make promises that Brid Hospital would be upgraded when a Conservative government was brought in. But after 11 years of Conservative government, nothing has happened to bring accident emergency to Bridlington. It is now time for a change. Bridlington residents and our residents should not be left in a hospital with a hospital that cannot provide accident emergency services. So I hope that all members will support this motion to call for the improvement of Bridlington Hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heslop Mullins, please.
Yeah, I'd like to second this and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor V. Walker, please.
Thank you. Of deja vu, talking about Bridlington Hospital and this conversation. I'm not particularly planning on arguing against the motion to improve and upgrade any health services, but I think it's really been made clear over many, many months that community hospitals should be community hospitals, and that it is no longer safe to have acute services in community hospitals. People should be treated in the acute services where they need to be treated. A community hospital is a good place to provide integrated care services for the most vulnerable of our residents, and I think in some ways I just wish that some of our members who bring this up on a regular basis would become a little bit more informed about modern health services and the delivery of modern health services. It's quite right that funds are being ploughed into acute services, and I have my own arguments about that. As long as we are propping up acute services, we're maybe not putting enough funds into public health and health prevention, community services, GP services, where resources should go. And I suppose my argument here is, why don't we, have some conversation and some dialogue that's ongoing at the moment with the changes in the integrated care system to try and influence where the money should go, rather than focusing on, the smallish parochial issues that keep coming up time and time again. Let's get a bit of a bigger picture about what's needed for the delivery of healthcare services, social services, and prevention and tackling health inequalities. Let's just do that instead of just going on and on about the same old thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beaumont, please.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan, just actually a little bit of word of advice, if I may proffer it. When you're on your feet and you feel as though you're standing in a position of strength, then a lot of the times you're actually not doing that. You see, when we talk about the health system, I'm chair of Overview and Scrutiny of Health. And I regret to inform you, because you may not be aware of this, but your member for health, who clearly your party, it's so important for you, has only turned up twice out of the last 14 meetings. Now, clearly, people can be ill, and at my last meeting, an independent member was ill, so she offered a replacement. That was picked up. But I'd like to think that your position of strength would be greatly added if you could actually practice what you preach, instead of using double standards, to actually have a member of your party not attending for 12 out of 14, I find quite shocking. And as Councillor Temple indicated earlier, with the individual, the drainage board, you have the self-same thing again. So practice what you preach, look at the rules, and I think we'll probably be better off. Also, don't forget, as you well know, without making more political parties, more comments, I'm assuming that there'll be other questions now bringing up on Bridlington, because this is how you're working. But the fact is that, as you all know, the CCGs are involved in the hospitals and it's not the ERYC. So we really should keep it less political, particularly on Overview and Scrutiny of Health. Please can I ask that you fully use your available seats, and hopefully we'll get further a little bit better. Thank you.
Councillor Gill, please. Sorry.
Is myself chair?
I think with Councillor Norman, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I will, of course, be supporting this motion today.
I would like to thank, first of all, Councillor Nolan for once again raising the Bridlington Hospital in Council. But whilst I hear what Councillor Walker is saying, and I agree with entirely what Councillor Walker has brought up in terms of the acute needs for hospitals, and of course we all know that stroke issues do need to be taken to very highly acute centres so they can be dealt with as quickly as possible. Any additional funding, and I do mean that, any additional funding which the Trust can get in terms of Bridlington or any hospital within the East Riding is really appreciated, and that needs to be sought. However, it does need to be pointed out that York and Scarborough Hospitals NHS Trust need to target Bridlington Hospital as a priority rather than pulling services away from it. And we're not just talking about acute services here, we're talking about any services such as, they escape my head at the moment, but we do need, as a council, to be in a place where it's ready to work with the Humber, Coast and Vale integrated care system to ensure that they are truly working towards a healthy Bridlington with a fully viable hospital service, and a hospital which has services which are accessible to all. So as I say, I will be supporting this motion today, but feel that we need to be continuing to strive for improvements in services for all of the East Riding residents and not just Bridlington and District. So yes, it does sound parochial, but we do need to look throughout the East Riding as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor A. Walker, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed. This motion actually calls for a bid to improve and upgrade the services. Mr. Chairman, that improvement must not mean the moving of those services to York. Our services have been relentlessly centralised there, with the result that in the year before COVID, residents of Bridlington and Driffield needed to drive more than 1.5 million miles to access our NHS services. That's the cruel side of efficiency. And it applies also to items like palliative care. Since about half of the inpatients for end-of-life services in North Yorkshire are actually East Riding residents. That's because they closed our splendid Macmillan ward and just moved the service away. This is not an improvement, and nevertheless, I really welcome this motion to keep the pressure on, and it isn't true to say it's not an East Riding matter. The CCG or ICS, whatever that system may bring, will be influenced by Kevin Beaumont's committee. It isn't true to say that we have no part in this. We have an influence. It's vital that we keep up the pressure, and only that will start to reverse the truly cruel centralisation of services away from Bridlington. So thank you for this motion. Didn't know it was coming. I'm happy to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to say anything, but I will, following Councillor Vanessa Walker's comments, because I think what is really key in this whole debate, because for years and years and years and years I've been in conversation about the Alfred Bean Hospital, Bridlington Hospital, and absolutely right that local ward members fight for what they want for their communities. But the answer to this is we are not the NHS. We are not investing that money. But what we can do, as Councillor Walker said, Vanessa Walker, is be involved strategically. We've got to have a voice on the new integrated care system, because that's where our voice can be heard in local government. And I know at this moment in time, as Councillor Walker knows, and our Chief Executive, we are fighting hard to make sure that local government's voice will be around those boards in the integrated care system. So I applaud everybody fighting for their local patch, which is what we all do as ward members, but at the end of the day, it's that involvement on the strategic side that is so important and that we'll be pushing for along with our neighbouring authorities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I can't see any hands, so could I ask Councillor Nolan to close the debate, please? Oh, Councillor Heslop-Mullins, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I too agree with Councillor Walker and Councillor Walker that we need to work with the integrated care system. However, we are parochial. Bridlington Hospital services 80,000 people nearly. That's nearly a quarter of the population of the East Riding. And when we talk about, services need to be centralised, I agree with that, where needed. However, when you see York and Scarborough Hospital Trust applying for funding for Whitby, for Malton, for Scarborough and for York, you do worry that the hospitals that they have in the East Riding are considered to be secondary to their importance. And it is that importance that we need to deal with. With regard to the missing member from the Liberal Democrats on the committee, he is a key worker in a hospital who gets called in. So I do think that has to be taken into account with the number of times he's able to attend a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan, would you now like to close the debate?
Oh,
Sorry, Councillor Burton. Sorry, I haven't seen you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make the point. I've heard to what's been said. I mean, obviously, I will support the motion. I am a local Bridlington member. I'm well aware of Bridlington Hospital, but Councillor Walker's made the point eloquently, and so has Councillor Beaumont, about the channels available to us. We have to go down the throat. I mean, unless I've missed something today, but the NHS are not in the building, and it is not council budgets. We have got to influence the NHS. We have to influence. So we've got to use the channels available to us to do that to our maximum. And we all have a role to play in that, and it's important that we do attend the Health and Wellbeing Board, we do attend health scrutiny, we do put pressure through the appropriate way, in the appropriate manner, and only by doing that can we influence. But it is about influence. We will not be setting the NHS budget when we come past Christmas. It is not part of our core business, but we will want to influence. And as local members, it's important that we do our bit to influence what services and what facilities are open to our Bridlington residents, because Bridlington is it's my town, and as a ward member, and it's a vital part. The health of our residents is vital to us. So it's about influencing, and influencing to maximum. And I would once again, recommend that our Lib Dem colleagues do attend the health scrutiny. I think that is important, and we play our role together to make the most influence as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to very briefly concur with what Councillor Beaumont has said, and I think the scrutiny committees are a vital part of this council. It's inherent on all political groups, I think, to ensure that they support those scrutiny committees to the maximum. And I'm afraid, Councillor Heslop-Mullins, it's not good enough simply to say that a key worker obviously needs to be somewhere else during the course of the meeting. As Group Secretary of my particular party, I spend a considerable amount of my week looking at the membership of committees and ensuring that we are covered in those committee meetings. And to be frank with you, it's quite lazy of any party to not ensure that they are fully attending those meetings to the best of their ability. So I just really wanted to make that point. It's really inherent on all of us to support the scrutiny process, which is so vital to this council. Thank you.
Thank you. I definitely can't see any more hands up now. So, Councillor Nolan, if you would like to close the debate.
I have to say there were a number of things raised which I think we need to cover off. Councillor Vanessa Walker talks about déjà vu and about going on about the same old issues. Well, I'm sorry, we make no apologies for bringing up this issue. It is a concern in Bridlington. It's been raised by residents. It's been raised to me by residents, and we will continue to push for it. Now, it may well be that the delivery of modern services means over-centralising or increasingly centralising services, but you also have to recognise that's not what people want. The people in Bridlington want and expect to be able to go to a local hospital to be dealt with. They do not accept that they have to go to York or Scarborough, 20 miles away, to get basic acute services. So it is an issue. And there's been a lot of talk about scrutiny and health, and I wasn't clear whether scrutiny and health is not really down to them. I think Councillor Beaumont said it's the CCG and all the rest of it. And then at the same time, there's a lot of talk about how important it is to go to scrutiny and health. If scrutiny and health is so important, then can I suggest that the Conservatives actually hand over some of the chairs and vice chairs of scrutiny so that the Liberal Democrats also have some buy into it, rather than cornering them all themselves? However, I'm just responding to what's been raised. No, this is really about us as councillors. We can influence, but let's remember that we're elected. We are elected to speak on behalf of residents. The trust is not elected to speak on behalf of residents. We are, and we do have, I believe, a moral authority as councillors speaking of our residents to bring these issues up with the relevant bodies. So no apologies for bringing it up. We will continue to push for it. We will continue to try and get the council to influence. And I'm not sure whether the Conservatives are backing this. If not, we will be asking for a recorded vote, because I think the residents of Bridlington deserve to know where the Conservative councillors stand on this issue. So can I ask, will you be supporting the motion? Yes. Okay, that's fine. I won't ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. I will now move to the vote on the motion. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions, please? That has been carried. Thank you. We now move on to item agenda 12, a Town and Parish Council Charter. Councillor Owen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to move that the Town and Parish Council Charter as set out in Appendix 1 of the report now submitted be approved and adopted. I may just say something in summing up. I know one or two people that might need to leave early might want to have a word first, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holtby?
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Eldridge?
Sorry for... can everyone hear me? I've been waiting this long to talk on this one. I'll make this count. The Town and Parish Council Communication Review Panel concluded in 2019, and this is where the Town and Parish Charter came from. It came with 11 recommendations. The first one is to introduce this charter. This is a way of opening communication with our town and parish councils. We only got a disappointing 41% response to this. But when you look at the fact that this was during the pandemic, maybe that answers some of the questions. I will be as honest as I can that I believe that the communication between the East Riding and our town and parish councils is probably at an all-time low. Therefore, if you will support this launch of the Charter, I hope this will open up a two-way dialogue which will allow us to move forward. I will end by apologising because I'm desperately late for a meeting in Beverley. I've got to get back. If anyone has any issues with the Charter, with the communication, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to visit parish and town councils and speak to you on this matter further. Thank you.
Unless someone's going to wave frantically, I can see no hands, so I will move to Councillor Owen if you wish to close the debate.
Yes, I think Councillor Elvidge has covered the sort of points I would wish to make. I think it's taken a long time coming with COVID and everything else following the review panel, but it's really important. It's a step in the right direction, but let's bear in mind this is a two-way communication. It's not us imposing a charter, it's something we agree with our town and parish councils, and I think it's a step in the right direction and happy to propose its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will therefore move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against, please? Any abstentions? That has been carried. Thank you. Now move on to agenda item 13, Efficiency and Value for Money of Council Services Review Panel Report. Councillor Handley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, fellow councillors, officers and members of the public. I am delighted to have the opportunity to address this council on the fast-track review panel that has now concluded on efficiency and value for money of council services. The aim of this review was to consider the arrangements in place to ensure that the council provides value for money and efficiency in its provision of services in order to improve the council's financial position and ensure good value is provided to our taxpayers. I am sure, colleagues, that you will agree with me, savings of over £39 million while still offering over 600 services to our residents is to be commended and a testament to our officers for their commitment to get the best value for money. During the course of the review, the meetings were held in an open and transparent manner and nothing was off the table. Some healthy debates took place which enabled the 15 recommendations you have before you today. The social value engine brought about some discussions, and this is an excellent tool that measures social, economic and environmental benefits. Not everything is measured by money. The social value engine helps organisations like us to think about how their activities are making a better place to live in. We were provided with numerous examples. One was the community hubs set up in lightning speed by this council to help our residents during COVID-19 lockdown. The direct costs were £1,290,921. However, when we used the social value tool, it was evaluated to £20,242,296. So for each pound spent, it generated £15.98 social return to our residents. This is an excellent tool that the panel would like to see used more often. It is clear that this council does offer efficiency and value for money. However, going forward, we recognise the need for a more commercial approach. If we are to continue to support our residents, we have to become more aligned commercially. The panel felt that the council's commercial drive is pivotal in helping to offset future budget pressures through working in a more commercial way. Therefore, the council must strive to devise more commercial innovation initiatives and work towards expanding its commercial arm. We now have a dedicated commercial team in place, and I know we are looking forward to working with them to bring about a more commercial council. As you will have read in this report, we have recommended that members receive regular updates, have member input and a seat at the table of the commercial board. This report, along with the 15 recommendations, was endorsed at Overview and Management Committee, and I hope today this council will also endorse it. If anyone has any questions that I do not have the answer for today, I will get the required information and get back to you. Equally, if anyone would like to discuss the report in a more depth way, again, please contact me and we can arrange a meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who took part in this review, directors, officers, fellow councillors and panel members for their support. We had some excellent questions and equally excellent answers. Finally, Gareth Nadeau, Principal Committee Manager, who made sense of everything that was discussed and has expertly put this report together. I would like to move the recommendations as printed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I don't see...
Councillor Burton, I think.
Oh, Councillor Burton, were you putting your hand up?
I don't know. He went like that. Yeah, yes.
We're just trying to get a microphone cleaned and...
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm conscious it's been a long day. It's 5:15, and I'll keep my comments brief. But I think it's important that I do congratulate Councillor Handley on this review panel. It's an excellent piece of work. Without finances, at the end of the day, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. We can't do social care. We can't do all the things that we've talked about today. We really do need the finances, and they are at the heart of what we do. And it's absolutely, and it's public money. And with public money, it has to be spent wisely. And efficiencies and value for money of what we do is absolutely crucial going forward. And it's not just about the efficiencies, because efficiencies are fine, and we've done that for a long period of time. And as it's been highlighted, we've saved £39 million over a number of years, which is a fantastic achievement. But we've also got to be modern. We've got to be forward-thinking, have ideas going forward, so we are not just reliant on government grants, which are obviously diminishing. We're not just relying on council tax, because our residents are going to have a difficult time going forward. We need to look at new ways. And of course, commercialism is one of those. And it provides a modern way of thinking and a modern approach. And having that social value tool to be able to measure proper returns on what we can achieve and new ways of working, I think is absolutely excellent, and it will really put us in a good place going forward. And just to highlight that the return, I mean, community hubs, what was it, £1 spent gets a £15 return to our residents. I mean, that's a terrific achievement, and I think this is the modern way going forward. And I'm really impressed with the recommendations. Clearly, it's absolutely important that members do get regular updates on commercialism, because we all have to buy into these, and we have to have an understanding, a clear understanding of what the opportunities, what the challenges are, and what the gains can be. Also, alongside that, I think it's absolutely, I like the idea of the lead member, input on commercial will be established, and we'll feed back to the commercialism board. I mean, obviously the lead member is the deputy leader. I mean, he's got a big portfolio, because obviously he's got people strategy, commercialism and digital in there. But clearly there's a lot to deliver on that, and obviously we'll be watching closely as to see what comes forward. So there's a lot in all that. But I'm hopeful that we can see a way forward, because we need to see a way forward. We do need to have new ways of generating funding. We do need to new ways of and make sure we spend our money wisely, because the public will be watching very, very closely as the bills hit their doorsteps after Christmas with all the challenges that are forward. So we need to prove that we spend every pound very, very wisely. And having a future vision going forward is going to be so important. So I think it's excellent. I think it's an excellent piece of work. And once again, it's good to see that the fast-track review panel is utilised, because it's a way that we can deal with a topic quickly, get it turned around, get a result quickly in real time. So it's all very current, and I think that's an excellent way going forward as well. So thank you for the report, and that's all I've got to say. I will be supporting the recommendations.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. So, Councillor Hanley, would you like to close the debate? Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this is an excellent review panel to be part of. And if members of the opposition had taken up their seat on this, they would have heard the excellent work that has been done not only by the Business Transformation Team, which has looked at 147 service areas in the last decade, but by the many staff that have subsequently taken up the challenge of doing things differently, more effectively and more efficiently, while still maintaining services that meet the needs of our public. And I would like to pay tribute to all of those staff that have worked so hard for us. And as Councillor Burton has said, and as was his vision as leader, times change and systems evolve, and we have to continue to look forwards and grasp new opportunities that open up to us, be that commercialism or devolved powers, which hopefully will bring with us increased funding. So I commend this review panel report to you, and I look forward to seeing how these recommendations are implemented and further developed in coming months and years. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to Councillor Handley, if you'd like to close the debate, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine. Thank you. I have nothing to add.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Handley. In that case, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Any against, please? Any abstentions? That has been carried. Thank you. So move to our last item on the agenda, item 14, committee timetable 2022 to 2023. Councillor Owen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that the committee timetable for the 2022-2023 municipal year be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Holtby.
Yeah, I'd like to second.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't see anyone at all, so therefore, Councillor Owen, would you like to close the debate? Well, that's what it was.
Fine, I close the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Then move to the vote. All those in favour, please. Any against? Any abstentions, please? In that case, that is carried. Thank you. And thank you all for a rather long session and for your time. And that concludes the meeting today. Have a safe